We live.
We're live.
Killing the mics.
All right.
The Devil's Advocates radio show is broadcast under a time brokerage agreement between Devil Radio and Civic Media, Inc. Some portions of this program may be pre-recorded. Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves and corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. Now live from the Civic Media Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
And now, here's your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. I believe, Dom, they call this day Tuesday, I believe.
Yes,
I did have to verify.
All right. Happy Tuesday to you, Crudy. Rich, working the board. Thank you, sir. Our fair audience always can join us. 844-967-2789. Crudy, I know. Welcome back, man. I know you're off yesterday, but, I started the show yesterday doing the Crudy. Welcome.
The pointing. You got to point at him. Got to let people know I welcome you. You have a wonderful time for the next 3 hours with the greatest radio show ever. Dom, yesterday, moving day, but much like a birthday, it's more like moving week. Some
Moving
even stretch it out into moving month.
Right.
And I'm nearing the end. The end's in sight, but that's mostly just because I got so much crap jammed in that Jeep out in the parking garage. I really got no peripheral vision. So that end might be a train. I have no idea. But moving the last kid off to college tomorrow. And then we're empty nesters. So looking forward to that. And so far, no major injuries. I have not hurt myself substantially in any way,
done.
shape, or form.
Lift with the legs. Tighten the core, engage the glutes. I mean, you'll be fine, Crudy.
My hamstrings are burning though. I do need to do some major stretching because it's not just the walking, it's not just the heavy carrying. Then it's the travel time, back and forth. I've logged probably like 1,000 miles in the last 3 days, just back and forth. But get near the end. And thank you to Darcy for professionally representing us, my pal over at Solidarity Realty. But back to work, Dom. This is sort of therapy for me. I love talking about the politics. I've been missing it. I'm not even living on a calendar anymore. What is this thing? Weeks and months. All I know is political cycles, and they're coming up rapidly. So today, big decisions made in the state of Wisconsin. Who's on the ballot and who ain't on the ballot? And the third parties primarily were affected by this because, we know Trump's on the ballot. And we know, it ain't Biden, is it, Trump?
No, it's unconstitutional. Kamala Harris. Poor Joe Biden. The guys are desperate.
And Tim Walz, of course. Tim Walz, Coach Walz, the co-pilot. And I wonder when they have to have the final deadline. I believe September 3rd, something like that. Because, I still wonder. I think Trump's got a little October surprise in him. I think he's going to replace J.D. Vance with Robert Kennedy Jr. Wouldn't that throw him off? Put a Kennedy on the ballot. The worst one, no doubt, but put a Kennedy on the ballot next to Trump. And I think Trump thinks two great brands side by side.
Yeah, not weird at all going from Vance to Kennedy Jr.
They got to do it. I should get a do-over on my VP.
Hey, man, knock yourself out. Whatever you think is going to help you win, go do that. But you better do it soon because they got to send, the info to the printers.
Interestingly, RFK on the Wisconsin ballot, even though he supposedly withdrew the Wisconsin Elections Commission, it's being reported today by our friends over at the Journal-Sentinel, a day after the state Supreme Court dismissed the challenge to remove Green Party candidate Jill Stein from the ballot in Wisconsin. Yeah, they don't like her much anymore, do they? People are running it up to the Wisconsin Supreme Court to exclude her from the ballot. The bipartisan Wisconsin Elections Commission confirmed she will appear. Yes, Jill Stein and the Greens on the ballot on November ballots in this battleground state. We call it Wisconsin. And the commission on Tuesday also kept, and this is a little political chicanery, I think, Dom, a little politically confusing, because independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is also on the ballot, though he has suspended his presidential campaign and endorsed former President Donald Trump. Now, if he's going to bleed any votes, Dom, it's going to be from Trump, don't you think?
Presumably. I also saw an Axios today that Michigan has denied RFK Jr.'s escape from the presidential ballot. So he will be on the ballot in Wisconsin. He will be on the ballot in Michigan as well.
Wisconsin elections commissioners also approved independent candidates Cornel West. Now, I was up close and personal with Cornel West at the DNC last week. I guess he gets in on his celebrity, Dom, because I don't think he's part of that party. And after rejecting a challenge that argued his declarations of candidacy, talking about Cornel West, were not properly filed due to notarization issues. That's the gruel. I'm just saying. I'm glad. And you know who I'm cheering for, Dom. But I'm glad to see the inclusion of all qualifying candidates.
Well, yeah, if you're qualified, get on the ballot. Absolutely.
Should we revisit Kanye? Because Kanye, his campaign did not do the qualifying things. They missed
the deadline. They missed the time, man. They came in late. I mean, there's a time set. The time is set. What are you going to do? Everyone knows the time. If you hire counsel and they get there late, you hired the wrong counsel.
Apparently you did. So we got some qualifying balloteers, Dom. Do you think the people of Wisconsin have any appetite for third-party candidates at this point?
As a former third-party voter, hell no. But that's just me.
We'll talk more about candy in the 4 o'clock hour, Dom.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yes, I think we will.
We'll save all talk of Moby Dick for the 4 o'clock hour. I'll just tease it with that.
Free Willy?
If you don't know what I'm talking about, you better stick around for 4. It involves Bobby Kennedy Jr. and a whale, and he took it home, and his kids had to ride along. But I can't tell you anymore. I don't want to steal the thunder of this Captain Ahab tale. We'll get there in the 4 o'clock hour. What about Robin Voss? I see he made the Raw story. Unfortunately, it was because the legal challenges that those that would want to recall Robin Voss, the legal challenges, they're being snuffed. It's not fair, Dom. It doesn't seem fair. But what happened? Update the audience.
The Wisconsin Supreme Court refused to hear Trump backers' appeal of Dane County Circuit Court judge ruling from July that petition signatures were wrongly collected under legislative boundary lines that are now banned from use for any election. And the Wisconsin Elections Commission also rejected their petition. Trump supporters have been trying to recall Voss, the longest-serving Assembly Speaker in Wisconsin history, after he refused calls to decertify Biden's election win in the state. 21,000
I applaud that
vote
effort.
victory.
Just for the record, put me down as pro recall Voss. Just political mischief I agree with.
Voss also drew their ire by refusing to back their plan to impeach top state election official Megan Wolf. The recall organizers had hoped to force an election for a week before the month's primary election. Yada, yada, yada. Not going to happen. No, but this is the thing. And this is what kind of, and I get it. Okay, they make their call. Not going to happen. Fine. But didn't they request from the court, hey, which lines should we use? Which legislative boundary lines should we use? And the court's like, we're not going to address this. And then they went their thing. Another court's like, too bad, not going to use the wrong ones. Use the wrong ones? You could have told them that before they went through the effort, Wisconsin Supreme Court. But okay.
Wah, wah. Couldn't it happen to a kookier bunch of fellas and girls?
I mean, on that side of it, it's kind of hard to defend the maniacs on that side. It's right on right, man. The Republican Party is in disarray.
Are they? Or are they in complete array with the MAGA cult leader, Dom? One other quick note here before we move on. I'm going to the Trump rally. I was excited, Dom. I got credentialed. I just had to take it through La Crosse. I sought credentials for this fine Trump town hall as it's being portrayed at the La Crosse Center on Thursday night as a representative of the Eagle 1490 AM soaring high above your radio dial in La Crosse. So I put the local media. I started there.
The local radio station. Ah.
The local in-town radio station we play out on. Not yet, though. Not till 4 o'clock, but we'll be there. Dana listening on the stream. Shout out in God's country to Dana. But do you see who Trump's bringing to the party, Dom? I've got a statement from the campaign. Should I break it in case?
Yeah. I'm not aware. Who's coming?
President Donald J. Trump announces a special guest moderator and Tulsi Gabbard at the La Crosse, Wisconsin Town Hall. And I dropped my son off at the fine college, the University of Wisconsin La Crosse, Dom, the same college we went to. And ironically, my son's so excited. He nearly did not get his best high school buddy going off to college with, buddy. And almost didn't get the room together, but it's official. They get to room together.
Oh, nice.
In the same crappy dorm I lived in 30 years ago. Yeah. And they're
how's the air conditioning in that dorm?
No AC in Sanford, my understanding.
It's like a hot box, man.
I know. I get to move them in on the hottest, like the third hottest day of the year. Behind the day I moved the rest of the family, the day I moved the other kid into college, and the day I get to move the other kid into college. All quite hot. It's good for my waistline, though. Broke man's Ozempic, sweating buckets. I've dropped some weight. I'm down a few pounds. The neighbor came over. He said, "You look good."
Yeah.
The shirt was, clinging to my body with the perspiration of a working man. Come back, taking care of business right here on the Devil's Advocates, and you can always join us. 844-967-2789. Oh, but I'll need to take off again tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
farm faced tough times, Joan stepped up to fight for us, working to lower taxes, improve rural roads, and secure support for farm programs. Joan Balwig puts farmers first. So when it comes to protecting my farm and my cows, I trust Joan Balwig. She's always stood with us. Now let's stand with her. Vote Joan Balwig for State Senate. Paid for by Volunteers for Agriculture, not authorized by any candidate or candidate's agent or committee.
As fall approaches, you have a lot to prepare for. Back to school, sporting events, family gatherings, and staying on top of your health. The virus that causes COVID-19 continues to evolve. So this fall, no matter what you're prepping for, you can prioritize your family's health and make a game plan for COVID-19 vaccination. Ask your doctor or pharmacist to learn more. Sponsored by Pfizer.
You're listening.
Occupy didn't start on Wall Street. It started on our street. The Devil's Advocate.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Phone lines are open for you, our fair audience. Rich will lightly screen the calls. You can always join at 844-967-2789. It's a call. It's also a text. And since Crute's here today, maybe someone will read them.
Dominic, breaking news. I'm reading the breaking news from the Washington Post. Special Counselor Jack Smith files new indictment against Trump in case involving alleged conspiracy to obstruct the 2020 election. That's the one I care about, Dom. We'll read further and we'll report on this as we're able to a little bit later in the show. But this is the January 6th case, and there are new charges filed against the guy, the already 34-time convicted felon I'm going to see on Thursday in our old town, Dom, La Crosse.
CNN reporting, just one sentence here. The special counsel's office quoted, the superseding indictment, which was presented to a new grand jury that had not previously heard evidence in the case, reflects the government's efforts to respect and implement the Supreme Court's holdings and remand instructions in Trump versus United States.
So they cleaned up all the, constitutional immunity that was extended by the U.S. Supreme Court when they handed down the murky ruling prior. So Smith said, fine, we'll set aside those charges. Here are your new freaking charges, man.
We'll get a new grand jury, and here's the new charges. Slim down just a bit. Yes.
Excellent. New indictments leveled. January 6th indictments leveled against the former president, Donald Trump, who's coming to darken the doorstep of God's country, La Crosse, Wisconsin, on Thursday. And Dom, I'm going to take this broadcast inside the red velvet ropes, inside the La Crosse Center, baby. I'm going there mostly because I was already in town. Got to drop my kid at UW La Crosse, stay, have a couple beers, maybe go to Piggy's, the freight house someplace downtown. And I'll get up early and I'll see what time the front row Joes show up. And I'll go interview some people. We'll get to know some people. And then, whatever time the final credentialed media can enter, Dom, might have to be flexible with me on Thursday. But I'm going to go into the Trump event and we're going to broadcast beyond the construct of the Devil's Advocate show. We're going to give coverage because Trump is in La Crosse. And if you didn't hear, Tulsi Gabbard, former Democratic Congresswoman, former Democratic presidential candidate. Oh, yeah. She was one of the 24 that were running, Dom. I remember Tulsi Gabbard in the race, although I always questioned her motives. I thought she was something of a Russian plant.
Okay. I mean, he's, I got to tell you, Donald Trump is really doing a fine job dealing with the weird aspect of his campaign by bringing in RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. Man, come on.
Embrace the weird, embrace the kooky. Hell, make Tulsi Gabbard your moderator for the town hall event going off at the La Crosse Center, Dom. If I could only encourage my kid to go. Now, Karsten's like, I could go, but there might be better stuff happening. My first day of college. I'm like, there could be, because of course there won't be any colleging yet. Mostly just buying red Solo cups, right? That's what I'd be doing. But his roommate might be he might be a little bit country, he might be a little bit Trumpster. So, if
little country, little rock and roll. I mean, last time Trump did a town hall, it wasn't very town hall-y, if I recall.
What are you expecting, Dom? Difficult questions.
Yes.
I would like my son to act as some sort of a Manchurian candidate first time.
I mean, if you're going to go through the effort to stand in line and deal with the heat and, and do the whole rigmarole to get inside the building, to do a town hall with Trump, and you get the opportunity to ask a question, and that's why you're there, should be some tough questions. Absolutely.
Mr. Trump, do you perceive yourself as a great president or the greatest president ever?
Right. No, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. A lot of people are saying greatest president ever.
Now, I wonder if Gabbard, a fine journalist, ? I'm gonna put an asterisk in my earlier prediction that JD Vance was going to get the heave ho in October. That'll be Trump's October surprise. But you never could tell. He could grab Tulsi Gabbard,
but
then he'd have a woman on the ballot, and she was a Democratic presidential candidate. So, the prediction is only that JD Vance gets kicked off the ballot, that he gets the heave ho from Trump. Walks the plank, throws him to the sharks and the whales, Tom. And it could be either Tulsi Gabbard or RFK Jr. that replaces JD Vance on the ballot. These are the things I think about.
But the October surprise would be too late to swap out. I mean, the ballots have to be printed, right? Yeah, come on, man. That's never going to happen.
You just vote for the guy on the top anyways. So who cares what the ballot says? It's Trump and whoever he shotguns in. Yeah, it could be a problem, but doesn't mean Trump won't do it. Doesn't mean Trump won't do it, Tom. 844-967-2789. While there's time, should we sneak one in?
Let's do it. Mark from the SAC, you are up. Welcome, Mark. Happy Tuesday to you, sir. What do you got for us?
Hey, Mark.
Happy Tuesday, yeah, and maybe I should say this for day for grievances, but I hear that Joan Ballwig's supporters got ads for her. Republican Joan Ballwig, who they don't mention in the ad that she's a Republican, that blocked the PFAS money coming up because she's a member of the Joint Finance Committee, that I've actually contacted the Kieske campaign and said, you guys got to get ads in the air, too, to counteract Joan Ballwig and her nonsense.
Spend that money. Spend that money.
But it's money that you're getting, but it is just Joan. I just noticed how careful they are to not mention the fact that she is a Republican and a Trump supporter through and through. So all they talk about is Joan Ballwig. She helped her cows, helped her farm, I noticed again. Once again, they're trying to distance themselves from Trump, but they're
hell, man,
Donald Trump all the way.
Mark Hovde ran for Senate without saying he's running in the state of Wisconsin, so I guess I'm not surprised. Thanks for the call, man.
I find it interesting. I found a press release from the city of La Crosse. They're moving all the homeless out the night before Trump arrives. August 28th. They're clearing the veterans parks down there. No homeless. Clean up the messes.
Yeah.
Build that wall.
The undesirables.
Come back. More devil's advocates. Is that us? Are we the undesirables?
Depends on your perspective.
I have gotten really lucky to be part of a study that looked at the use of solar-powered fans that were attached to the back of the hutch. And I think that this could be a really effective tool for farmers who use a hutch system because there aren't really a lot of things out there for hutches. And it really helps to improve air quality as well as intake and thermoregulatory behavior. Otherwise, in like a pen setting, you can treat them kind of just like a normal lactating cow and have them have fans and soakers and things like that. And I think those are just as helpful.
Grace Larson along with us, a graduate student at UW Madison working with dairy calves. Stick around, we'll take a look at more agribusiness news in 60 seconds.
They believe in protecting the families and children in our farming communities. Kids love to be included in the daily farm activities, but accidents can happen quickly. Reduce the chance of injury by making sure your farm is a safe environment for adults and kids. Learn more at ruralmutual.com.
Wisconsin Farm Bureau leadership opportunities have benefited me in multiple ways. Right now, I'm a member of the Farm Bureau Leadership Institute, and I always thought I was a good public speaker. And then we went through some of that training in our very first session, and I had these aha moments that I'm going to use when I am promoting agriculture to consumer groups.
WFBF.com.
You should reach out to them.
Today, the Wisconsin Ag Coalition is hosting candidates running for state office on a few farm visits across Dane County. The goal of the event is to build relationships so that state candidates can successfully represent agriculture if elected this fall. The group is visiting Bear Crop Science in DeForest and Hague Dairy Farm in Dane. I plan to make it out to one of the stops today, so look for pictures at Midwest Farm Report on Facebook. In other news, you're going to want to get your Packers watch party tickets before they're gone. Fabulous Farm Babe Pam Yonke and the Wisconsin FFA Foundation are co-hosting this event. This will be at Pam's residence in Titletown, known as Pambo. This will be for the September 6th game as the Packers take on the Eagles in Brazil. It'll also feature live music and plenty of food and drink. Find more at MidwestFarmReport.com. I'm Stephanie Hoff.
This is your local Civic Media radio station. Want to hear even more? Anytime? Find all of it at civicmedia.us.
An excessive heat warning remains in effect as high temperatures today tap the low 90s, and it really will feel more like 105 degrees. We've got chances for strong to severe storms to strike tonight, packing the potential of high, damaging wind gusts, hail, and heavy downpours. I'm meteorologist Brittany Rouleau. Right now, 88 degrees.
DevilRadioSwag.com. You've asked for it for over a decade. We've finally gotten off our dead and responded. DevilRadioSwag.com. T-shirt and Dom's favorite slimming black, white or gray. DevilRadioSwag.com. Crew necks, hoodies, coffee mugs, exclusive merchandise of the greatest radio show ever. Only at DevilRadioSwag.com, because we got bills too.
At Chats Design Build, we provide remodeling done well with love. Our commitments extend beyond our workplace and your home to support our community. We judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin, and we believe all humans deserve quality, publicly funded education, childcare, and health care. But what do you believe in? At Chats Design Build, we believe every person must have the opportunity to thrive. If you're thinking about remodeling your home, go to chatsdesignbuild.com to learn more about our commitments to you, your home, and our community.
On our next show, despite the grueling heat, we'll be here talking to Mike McCabe from Substack.
When they go low, we get high. The Devil's Advocates.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Tuesday edition. I believe it's Tuesday. If that's
It is
what the
Tuesday.
So-called calendar is telling me, Dom. But days and weeks and months, they have no meaning to me. Just elections and outcomes, Dom.
69 days and like 9 hours, dude.
69 days?
And 9 hours, yes. And change.
Very cool. And then editorial. over at the Cap Times. An endorsement, Dom. Kamala Harris for president.
Shocking.
Now,
shocking.
The Cap Times, if you're unfamiliar, if you're living outside the greater Madison-Dane County area, skosh, just a tad progressive, tad lefty. One of my favored sources, our friend John Nichols works there. A lot of people work there. Here is what their editorial board is saying today, though. The Democratic National Convention concludes a remarkable process of transition by one of the country's two major parties. This year's presidential campaign began with the expectation. I can't even read it, Dom. I'm having a hard time reading about the prior expectation that President Joe Biden would be the Democratic nominee for a second term, and that Vice President Kamala Harris would run with him on a ticket that merited re-election, but that was burdened by a broad popular concern about Biden's age and Biden's ill-fated appearance at the first presidential debate with his Republican rival, former President Trump, upended the Democrats' re-election bid. Biden and his partisan supporters had to deal with the difficult question of whether they were offering voters a sufficiently compelling candidate, along with a sufficiently compelling vision to prevail at a critical juncture in the American experiment. And Dom, to their credit, Democrats faced reality and acted. Biden stood down, Harris stood up, and she chose Minnesota Governor Coach Tim Walz as her running mate on a reorganized Democratic ticket. The process was not easy, but it was necessary, and the willingness of Democrats to do the right thing has been rewarded by a surge in national polls and in polls from battleground states such as Wisconsin. It's the only one I care about, Tom.
Crute, millions of Americans who expressed uncertainty about whether they would back a Biden-Harris ticket are now supporting the Harris-Walz ticket. We think they are making the right choice. In fact, we think they are making the only reasonable choice. Today, we embrace that choice by making our own enthusiastic endorsement of Harris for the presidency and Walz for the vice presidency. The Capital Times had made endorsements for president, governor, congressional seats, and down-ballot posts for more than a century. We've endorsed Republicans, Democrats, and independents, including former Wisconsin Governor Robert La Follette, a lifelong Republican who a century ago ran as an independent progressive. Most of our endorsements in recent years have gone to Democrats because the party of Franklin Roosevelt and Barack Obama has offered a more realistic economic and social vision, supporting higher wages, expanded access to health care, increased funding for public education and public services, an embrace of women's rights, civil rights, LGBTQ plus rights, and disability rights, and taking the side of conservation, environmental protection, and climate justice. We would be thrilled if Republicans tried to be competitive with the Democrats on these issues, as they once did in the Wisconsin of Warren Knowles, Lee Sherman Dreyfus, and Tommy Thompson. Even when we disagreed with those former Republican governors, we respected the determination to do right by Wisconsinites. We have no such respect for Donald Trump or for his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Trump is a twice impeached, multiply convicted, wholly dishonorable candidate who literally tried to overturn the results from Wisconsin in the 2020 election.
They're still holding that against him. That little detail.
On. Did he really? Because he wasn't convicted of that yet.
There are new indictments leveled by Jack
superseding
Smith today.
indictments today. We'll get to that in the next
we'll
hour.
Talk about him.
The American electorate rejected him by 7 million votes. He should not be allowed near the White House, and neither should Vance, whose wild-eyed extremism suggests he has no more respect for democracy than Trump. If the Republican Party was serious about politics, is serious about governing in this definitional moment in American history, it would have rejected Trump and Trumpism at its convention in Milwaukee. But that didn't happen. Instead, the Republicans doubled down on their dysfunction, and in so doing, they disqualified their ticket. In stark contrast, Harris and Walz are uniquely qualified. In addition to her 4 years of experience as vice president, Harris served ably in the U.S. Senate as California's attorney general and as San Francisco's district attorney. Walz, a former teacher who for decades served in the National Guard, has 12 years of experience as a member of the U.S. House and 6 years as one of the most effective and progressive governors in the history of Minnesota. Harris and Walz are ready to govern. They will do so with a domestic policy vision that builds upon the successes of the Biden-Harris administration, working to counter inflation by cracking down on corporate price gouging, investing in housing construction and initiatives to make home buying easier for working Americans, cutting child poverty, and addressing the medical debt crisis. Trump says Harris's proposals are radical. That's absurd. These are relatively modest interventions that, in many instances, are less ambitious than the anti-inflation initiatives the former Republican presidents Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford. And the effort to tackle medical debt, while surely welcome, falls far short of the single-payer Medicare for all reform that represents the best strategy for cutting costs and improving care. There are, of course, areas in which we differ with Harris and Walz. For instance, we would like to see them make a clearer break with Biden's foreign policy team on the question of Gaza. To our view, the United States needs to become an honest player in the Middle East, actively advocating for an immediate ceasefire, for the release of hostages, and for justice and security for Palestinians and Israelis. We believe.
Wait. Let me interrupt the editorial, Dom, and I apologize by extension. It is very hard for Kamala Harris, while she is still currently the VP serving under Joe Biden, to make a clean break from Biden's Gaza-Israel policy. You know what I'm saying? So while I would agree with them, and, if you're aspiring to things, that'd be great, boys and girls. But in the real world I live in, the boss still gets to set the rules, at least till the end of his term. And the boss is Joe Biden right now. It is still his presidency. Please continue.
The Cap Time wraps it up here shortly. We believe that Harris and Walz have the capacity to evolve towards the positions embraced by former President Jimmy Carter and U.S. Rep. Mark Pocan when it comes to Middle East policy, and we hope they will do so. In a more general sense, we've had enough contact with Harris and Walz over the years to develop confidence in their shared desire to keep moving in the right direction for America and the world. With Trump, on the other hand, our only confidence is that he will continue to break everything he touches. The 2024 election is not a close call. The contrast between the Harris-Walz ticket and the Trump-Vance ticket is stark. We know that some may think it is early for a newspaper to make an endorsement in the fall campaign. We disagree. We believe this is precisely the time for Wisconsinites to throw their support to Kamala Harris for president and Tim Walz for vice president. So saith the editorial at the Cap Times.
Hey, those fine candidates, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, coming back to Milwaukee next Monday for Labor Day. Bet they're going to Labor Fest, Dom. What do you think?
Oh, nice.
Coming to party with the folks, the men and women of union labor. Trump, of course, going to be in La Crosse on Thursday. You got J.D. Vance darkening the doorstep into Pier tomorrow. And you got both Harris and Walz making a big appearance. I bet they'd be at the Summerfest grounds, don't you think?
For Labor Fest. Yeah. Obama came there a while ago, right? Oh, yeah,
man.
We
were there. We were there for Obama at Labor Fest. And the coolest part, when Air Force One drops into Mitchell and you can kind of see it across the lake. Oh, that is a cool sight. And then,
that's a big plane, yeah.
15 minutes later, the presidential-style motorcade made its way over to the Summerfest grounds, Don. But yeah, we saw Obama there. Hell, I'm pretty sure, didn't we see Biden at Summerfest? Or
yeah, we may have.
I know there wasn't a lot of live rallies. That might have been a prior rally we've seen, Biden at. But I would say, Dom, what are you doing next Monday?
Probably not working, Crute.
I suspected as much. The men and women of labor minus Dom.
844-967-2789. According to the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and thank you, Rich, for the heads up on this. On the heels of the DNC, Harris and Walz will blitz the country for a series of events in every battleground state. Harris will travel to Michigan and Pennsylvania, and the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, will appear at a Labor Day event in Virginia. Other campaign surrogates will visit North Carolina, Nevada, and Georgia. Not yet announced where the Walzes will speak in Milwaukee or what time they'll be in the city. Walz last in Wisconsin for a rally at the Pfizer Forum on the second night of the convention, and that was a barn burner night as well.
I'm feeling pretty confident about the Summerfest grounds, people. I'm not saying it's an ironclad guarantee, because maybe they need a bigger venue. like American Family Field or something. Bigger. I'm thinking bigger.
Well,
than the
it's
Summerfest
only
grounds.
Walls. Harris will not be with him.
Oh, that takes all the thunder out of my announcement. No, that'll be cool. Walls at Labor Fest probably makes it more acceptable that you'll be ditching, I suspect.
Thank you.
Have you seen Walls yet?
No, I have not seen Walls live give a speech live. No, I mean, obviously we've seen him.
You're going to like the guy. Maybe
Well,
not
yeah.
at Labor Fest, but eventually.
No, and
Eventually.
I think, I mean, come on, man. Walls is, he was a teacher. He's a National Guard guy. He worked his way up as a congressman and, became, earned the votes of his peers, or I'm sorry, his constituents in Minnesota to become a governor. I mean, that means something. I think he's a down to earth cat. I think he'll, if it is at Labor Fest or wherever it will be, I think he'll be received warmly.
It'll absolutely be at Labor Fest on Labor Day in Milwaukee. It's kind of a big deal down there. And if you're sending Tim Walz, I mean, part of the appeal of this guy, Tim Walz, the Coach Walz persona, the flannel shirt wearing persona, it's funny. During the DNC, a lot of the females wore white for suffrage. And Kamala Harris, obviously, hopefully soon to be the first female president. I reviewed some of the Colbert because we missed so many of the late night shows. We were still working last week. And Colbert said, the audience, many of them wearing white, and Tim Walz, of course, very white in his own regard. Special kind of white. But, I think part of the appeal to the working class, upper Midwest, and that's still demographically a big part of the state of Wisconsin. And some of the bleed historically is, well, I'm talking about the Trump has been working stiffs, labor dude. So I look forward to a Tim Walz labor-centric speech from the Summerfest, Labor Fest grounds on Monday, September 2nd. But Kamala Harris apparently will not be there. That is as disappointing to me as no Beyonce at the DNC.
Come on, the Hill.
And the TMZ, they were reporting it. We got T-Bone. I got Beyonce. Now it's Beyonce. Now everyone, when I say T-Bone, that was a long story. But now when I say I got Beyonce at the DNC, everyone's going to know, oh, that's when you wanted something to happen and you thought it was going to happen. And, the entire media world, we were all holding our breaths for Queen Bee, Beyonce. And no Queen Bee.
Labor Fest, Crute, Labor Day, chance to remember those who made sacrifices for the benefits many take for granted. Weekends, worker protections, vacation, overtime pay, the list goes on. Every year, labor unions and union members of the Milwaukee Area Labor Council, AFL-CIO, put on the biggest festival on the Milwaukee lakefront, and it's free. It's open to the public. Through the generosity of local unions and the companies at which they work, we can bring you a day of fun at the lakefront, which includes live music for adults and families, children's entertainment, bingo, wrestling, classic car show. You have to get the caddy down there. And a union raffle with a grand prize of $5,000. Before you head to the lakefront, visit the parade route to see the union members and their tracks on their Harleys and marching with their locals in downtown Milwaukee. The parade will end at the Henry Mayer Festival grounds. That's the Summerfest grounds, where the Labor Fest will take place. 11 a.m., the parade leaves Ziegler Union Square, and 11 to 5 p.m., the Labor Fest at the festival grounds. And maybe Governor Walz. Folks, we are the Devil's Advocates, 844-967-2789. I might
that
go.
doesn't sound like work. It sounds like a party. It's also our favorite.
Right. I remember. Why is that again?
They advertise with us.
Zero Res, my favorite palindrome.
And carpet cleaner.
And carpet cleaner.
Get the best carpet cleaning. Carpet cleaning online at zeroresmedicine.com. Tell them the Devil's Advocate sent you. DevilRadioswag.com. You've asked for it for over a decade. We finally gotten off our dead and responded. DevilRadioswag.com. T-shirt and Dom's favorite slimming black, white, or gray. DevilRadioswag.com. Crew necks, hoodies, coffee mugs, exclusive merchandise of the greatest radio show ever. Only at the DevilRadioswag.com, because we got bills too.
Tons of glass artists share the same passion for eye-catching art as Ignite Glass and Gifts, so we're showcasing their work alongside our talented local artists and our in-house Ignite artists. The latest techniques, the hottest colors, and mind-blowing designs are here for you to enjoy. Madison's favorite for glass, gifts, and vape, Ignite Glass and Gifts. Monona Drive, Williamson Street, and Odana Road, plus IgniteGlassandGifts.com. Do your eyes a favor and see this stuff.
Mad Radio.
The Devil's Advocates know how to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and we're all out of bubblegum.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Phone lines open for your take always. 844-967-2789. Talk or text. Hit us up. Crute, I know we're going to, in the next hour, get into this new superseding indictment filed by Jack Smith. They pared it down a few less pages, taking into account what the U.S. Supreme Court said, and laid it on the lap. But I got to get your opinion, man. We talked yesterday at length about the Jay Weber situation, man. WISN here in Milwaukee, iHeart's star of Wisconsin, of course, said some very terrible things about Gus Walls, lamenting the fact that he was
just on the social medias.
It doesn't matter. But he was off the air on Thursday. He was off the air on Monday. And I did tune in. I know this is usually your beat, man, to Righty Whitey Talk Radio. I had to find out. Was Jay Weber on iHeart this morning? No, he was not. Does that mean anything to you, man?
Yeah, long vacation going into the Labor Day weekend. Jay Weber has got monstrous ratings, and Righty Whitey Talk Radio really doesn't give a damn about your feelings, man, because there'll be plenty of sponsors, and I would discourage the boycotting of these sponsors. Some people reached out to me and said, what should we do? It's hard enough to get sponsors on Lefty Talk Radio because we don't have the enormous reach of Jay Weber and WISN. I would say harass him on social media and the mothership, WISN, and, complain to the station manager. I hate to give out names. I got a few friends in that building. I know who to bug, but ultimately, doesn't matter how much you whine and cry. This will not get Jay Weber fired. Jay Weber's a monster.
I don't know, man. I've heard a little bits and pieces of the replacement, the sub, let's call him, Ben Yount. Sounds very Righty Whitey Talk Radio-y, man. I didn't know when I listened to today. I was like, is that Jay or is this somebody else? I didn't know until they came back and introduced themselves and so on and so forth.
Jay's got a sense of humor generally.
This guy was snarky, sense of humor, whatever. So what I'm telling you, man, is that I'm not clear that you can't just poke that guy out, stick another one in, and they're going to lose a step from the rating standpoint. If that's what you want, this other guy's doing the same thing. Maybe he's a little less offensive about it. Maybe. But I'm not clear that those are Jay's numbers versus WISN's numbers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, individually, absolutely. And you're wrong. Because I've broken out their day parts, man. I geek about the analytics of radio, dude. Trust me, you're wrong. You look at the individual hours he is on, even relative to the lineup at WISN. He is the king of the morning, man. And I thought it was Belling. I always thought Belling was their big whopper, right? He's the
afternoon guy.
Great white whale.
Is it the morning slot, man? Come on. You're going to tell me you don't think anyone else sticking in that slot could pull those ratings? You think it's Jay's unique
not
talent? This is what you're telling me.
Well, point this out to you and those that pay attention in radio. Let me give you a little broader example, not to
All
get
right,
too
all right.
geeky on you.
Sure.
Charlie Sykes had a 23, 24-year air shift with WTMJ. They have never recovered from the loss of Charlie Sykes. And now that they lost their afternoon guy, Jeff,
Wagner.
help me out. Wagner, thank you. I mean, that is a greatly diminished radio station. So if you think it doesn't matter who the host is, Dom, then don't feel bad if I ain't here tomorrow. Because you'll do just fine, or whoever, Rich will be my whoever,
Right,
man.
someone
just
will
put
fill
another
those
Crute
holes.
in the seat, right? So no, you can say the hosts don't matter, but Jay Weber has a greater reach than any of the other hosts on that station. He has the greatest reach. And you can say morning drive. Well, guess what? Belling's got afternoon drive. And Dan O'Donnell's got the mid-morning, and Vicki McKenna, she puts her 2 cents in there. And while I basically think they're all one-size-fits-all hate mongers, their ratings are not identical across day parts. There are preferences shown by the audience, and the audience likes Jay. And, quite frankly, Jay is a bit of a jerk, right?
You think?
And in some degree, I think
bitch
that's
boy?
why he's, well,
Yeah, that's kind of jerky. Is it a fireable offense?
no.
No.
Not on these social medias, not after a retraction and apology. It's interesting. Tim Walz and Gwen Walz, the very intriguing soon-to-be second lady, they're both coming to Labor Fest on Monday. And we don't know what's Labor Fest, but trust me, they're not going to counter-program Labor Fest in Milwaukee on Labor Day. So they're going to Labor Fest. So I look forward to seeing both Gwen and Tim Walz. And, of course, it was their son that was attacked by Jay Weber. And I suspect coming out of the Labor Day weekend, Jay will be back on the radio Tuesday. He'll enjoy a nice long break. His boss, probably Jerry Bod, called and said, Jay, just take a couple extra days off, man. Just let the smoke clear, and we'll be right back to hating on kids and whoever you want to right after the Labor Day weekend. Because that's what your audience wants, demands from you. And did I ever point out that right-wing talk radio, after Joe Biden won the election in 2020, took a dump talking about WISS, the biggest stick in the state, as they claim.
WISN.
WISN. Their ratings dumped when Fox News called Arizona for Biden. They went to hell for like a month. And then they all got in line, started telling us, oh, it was stolen. It was rigged. You should all show up on January 6th. Do something about it.
You should all tune in and let us tell you how it was rigged, even though they lost the recounts, they lost the court cases, they lost all the BS because it was pure BS, but they got their audience back. I guess that's worth something.
Well, Dan O'Donnell sent his in-laws to D.C. for the January 6th. I wonder if they bumped into Derek Van Orden that day. Come back with us. We are the Devil's Advocates. New indictments against Trump on the topic of January 6th. A happy hour indeed. We'll tell you about it. Wisconsin summers are too short, so this year we decided to make the most of it. Crute called Go Landscaping
sixth indictment. I'm Michelle Franzen. Special counsel Jack Smith charging former President Donald Trump in a superseding indictment in the federal election interference case. A grand jury recommending the charges following the Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity.
Prosecutors say this new superseding indictment was voted on by a new grand jury that had not previously heard evidence in the January 6th case. The charges remain the same. But a spokesman for Jack Smith says the new charging document, quote, reflects the government's efforts to respect and implement the Supreme Court's holdings. The revised indictment mainly refers to Trump as a candidate for president rather than as the sitting president, and it removes about 9 pages of prior material that had referenced steps Trump allegedly took from the White House. The Supreme Court ruled in July that Trump enjoys at least the presumption of immunity for all his official acts.
ABC Stephen Portnoy. This is ABC News.
This news report is sponsored by Wisconsin Capital Management, LLC, serving their clients for 40 years. Visit wiscap.com.
Civic Media News. I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. Wisconsin is dealing with the hottest temperatures this summer with the heat index above 105 degrees in Milwaukee yesterday. Phil Beer was helping his son move into his dorm at UWM in the morning.
I just was imagining how much more exhausted everybody's going to be later in the day. I felt very fortunate to have it early on.
The National Weather Service has issued excessive heat warnings and advisories for much of Wisconsin throughout the day and into tonight. The Green Party will stay on November ballots in Wisconsin. The state Supreme Court yesterday rejected a request from the Democratic Party to remove Jill Stein for president. Democrats said the Green Party doesn't qualify to be on the ballot. The Wisconsin Elections Commission rejected the complaint, and Democrats appealed to the Supreme Court. I'm Terry Bell, Civic Media News. Now, here's what you need to know closer to home.
This is news from WMDX Madison. I'm Savannah Tomei-Olson. In a story we've been following, we now know why the Reedsburg varsity football team canceled the first 2 games of the season. It has to do with harassment of Amish people in the community. Sauk County Sheriff Chip Meister released a statement saying his office was doing extra patrols after learning someone was targeting the Amish in Sauk County. They ended up finding a car in question out and about in the area with 9 minors inside. All of them were cited for disorderly conduct. According to Wisconsin Public Radio, the teens vandalized barns, homes, and a school. One woman told WPR she went to speak with some of the victims and they were kind and forgiving. She's now holding a benefit to raise money for the Amish community so they can fix the damage. Meanwhile, the principal of Reedsburg High School says she's devastated that so many student-athletes will miss out on playing, but says this is a learning experience. According to WPR's reporting, it's unclear whether the teens will face any additional consequences. And that's what you need to know. I'm Savannah Tomei-Olson, WMDX News.
The Badgers ready for a new season. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. College football. The Badgers host Western Michigan on Friday night. Wisconsin finished with a disappointing 7-6 record last season. Head coach Luke Fickell.
And if I would say anything about last year, that's where I think after week 1 and 2, I did recognize one of our shortcomings was our ability to problem solve as things changed within a game, as things changed from the start of a game, because, I felt like last year we were really good with the things we prepared for, but we were not nearly as good with the things that we hadn't prepared for. And to be able to problem solve, and I think we'll get a great look at that in week 1.
NFL, the Packers have a new backup quarterback. He traded a 7th-round pick to the Titans for Malik Willis, who now has to learn a new playbook by next week.
Without preparation, you never feel comfortable. You never feel like you're able to go do your best. I just want to take every day like this my last and just learn as much as I can, retain that information, and go out there and try to do it the next day.
That's the Packers' new backup quarterback, Malik Willis, with Sports on Mike Clemens.
Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app.
I'm meteorologist Mace Michaels. A slight shower chance this evening, otherwise mostly cloudy and a low in the upper 60s. Patchy early fog, otherwise a mixture of sun and clouds and highs in the low 80s for Wednesday. Another chance of showers and storms Thursday, high mid-80s. It's 88 right now.
This is Chad Spade for Chad's Design Build. We're proud to employ some of the best carpenters and remodeling professionals in our industry. Are you honest and hardworking? Do you love to improve people's lives by improving their homes? Chad's Design Build offers excellent compensation and benefits focused on outstanding customer service, professional design, construction management, and craftsmanship, all in a nurturing, positive workplace. Whether you're thinking about
The Devil's Advocates radio show is broadcast under a time brokerage agreement between Devil Radio and Civic Media Inc. Some portions of this program may be pre-recorded. Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves and corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. Now live from the Civic Media Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
And now, here's your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. It's going to be a Moby Dick of a show, Dom. Quite a whale. We'll get there.
We'll get there. Hang on to it.
Piling up and breaking before we can even get through the commercial break. Dom, I see breaking news. There will finally be an interview of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And it's going to be on CNN this Thursday at 8 p.m.
Central,
Bash.
yes.
8 p.m. Central Time. And ironically, we got Trump doing a little town hall in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Do you think Trump will try to pre-buttle the interview? Do you think he'll try to be predictive? Here's what she's going to say.
Well,
Communist Kamala.
Trump and Vance and the megas are continually trying to define their opponents. They should be more concerned about, getting their guy in line and on message.
And personally, I'm kind of into this political season, so I'm excited that Tim Walz and Gwen Walz are coming down to Labor Fest. Now, not official that it's Labor Fest, the venue, but they're not coming to Milwaukee on Labor Day to go counter program against Labor Fest. So they'll be at the Summerfest grounds if you'd like to make plans.
Easy access, man. Flying to General Mitchell, it's like a 10-minute drive up to the lakefront at Labor Fest. That seems very logical. I guess got to tell you, all the whining and crying that these megas have been doing. Oh, we don't know anything about her. We don't know her policies. She hasn't sat for an interview. I mean, she's doing a sit down with Walz, with CNN, as mentioned, on Thursday, a week after she accepted the nomination. You know what I mean? It's like, how's that for timing, fellas? Is everyone happy now? Y'all happy now? You got nothing else to bitch about? So
no,
we're good? Okay.
Here's the gripe. She's not doing it alone. She's got Walz there to give her a little cover fire, but not in a war zone sort of way, just in a political cover fire sort of a way. That'll be the complaint, that she can't do it solo. Trump will be talking about it.
That's the thing. Listen, you cannot placate those that will not be placated. There will always be some complaint. Seriously. And no matter what happens, you can't worry about trying to satisfy your political rivals. You got to run a good campaign. And if they say you got to sit down solo with an interview with one day after, Joe Biden drops out, you can tell them to go pound sand. It's a week after she accepted the nomination, and she's with her vice presidential candidate. I have absolutely no problem with that.
Well, you're a pushover. We'd absolutely take Tim Walz, Gwen Walz, Gus Walz, Hope Walz, Kamala, Doug Emhoff. We'd take any of the family members. But, Dom, let's get to the, I'm kind of burying the lead here. The real breaking news of impact and import. New federal indictment filed against Trump in the federal January 6th case. The Washington Post, and this is being widely reported all across the media sphere, Dom. Special counsel Jack Smith has filed a new indictment of Donald Trump in the case involving an alleged conspiracy to obstruct the results of the 2020 election. Come on, man. It's alleged until he's convicted, which will come soon, but probably not soon enough for the American people to fully expose this man to, the evidence in history.
You take a guilty verdict into account prior to casting a vote for the man? Sure. That will not happen.
Dom, a move that follows a historic, is that what they're calling it, Supreme Court ruling granting broad immunity to presidents for official acts and comes just before an election period window was about to close on filing such charges. In about 10 days, the Justice Department policy known as the 60-day rule will take effect for stalling any new filing of charges against the former president, who's again the Republican nominee for the White House. What a fine choice. Can't wait till the political windows close so they can't continue to indict me.
Just gotta hurry up and wait.
Dom, in a written notice to the court, Smith said the indictment was filed by a new grand jury that had not previously heard evidence in the case, and that it reflects the government's efforts to respect and implement the Supreme Court holdings and remand instructions, and otherwise, satisfy that cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs immunity ruling. So you start with a new grand jury, so they can't say it's tainted, can't say they've heard what the fruit of the poison tree or whatever they call that in legal terms, right? So this jury had not heard the tainted evidence. So you just scale it back and you lay out new charges. And what do you know? You're still able to bring indictments. It's almost like there's a preponderance of evidence or something, Dom.
Yeah, you think? The Washington Post goes on. Crute Smith said he will not seek to have Trump arraigned again on the new version of the 4-count indictment and still expects to make a joint proposal later this week about how to schedule a new set of pretrial hearings. Now, the original 45-page indictment has been reduced to 36 pages after prosecutors removed a series of allegations that the Supreme Court's conservative supermajority said were wrongly filed.
Now, I don't like to do math on the radio, Don, but that's a 20% reduction. What a deal.
Such a deal. I got it for you. Specifically, those allegations related to an effort by Trump in late 2020 to make the Justice Department support his false claims of potential voter fraud. That's problematic, too. I mean, if you're bustling the DOJ to put out false statements about your
official acts,
election, yeah, is it, though? Is it?
No,
it's
of course
your
not.
Election, man. It's not official. That's election. The Post goes on. That means Trump is no longer charged with trying to force his Justice Department to conduct sham election fraud investigations and to urge state legislators to meet and choose fraudulent electors over the legitimate ones. The Supreme Court ruled that the interactions between the president and his Justice Department would be considered an official presidential act that is immune from prosecution. The removal of those allegations also means the indictment no longer accuses someone identified in the original document only as co-conspirator number 4, but who people familiar with the case have said is former Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark. Those people spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss parts of the investigation not made public. Clark's removal from the case means that instead of 6 uncharged co-conspirators, there are now 5, most of them lawyers who advised Trump on his efforts to undo the results of the 2020 election.
Well, technically, Jeffrey Clark isn't a lawyer anymore, right? Wasn't he disbarred for his prior acts? Please continue.
I lose track of all the megas, making attorneys get attorneys. I lose track of who's disbarred. Just a little bit more here. The indictment is tailored to the Supreme Court's criticism of Smith's approach and their conclusion that a president or former president cannot be charged for official acts, yada, yada, yada. As a result, indictment tries to underscore more clearly that Trump and his co-conspirators allegedly acted in their unofficial capacities. Quote, these co-conspirators included the following individuals, none of whom were governing officials during the conspiracies, and all of whom were acting in a private capacity. The new language in the superseding indictment says, again, this is breaking news that will be updated. New federal indictments charged against Trump. Yay!
That's good news. I see that as good news. I can't wait to have Jim Santel on. We're working on Friday, right? Former U.S.
Friday,
Attorney James Santel.
Friday at 5 o'clock.
Don't forget his fine program, Amicus, a law review, Saturday mornings on the Civic Media Network between 9 and 11 a.m. Jim Santel working towards Friday. And new charges against Donald J. Trump, a scaled down, a 20% more efficient indictment. New grand jury, didn't want to be accused of tainting. Now you've cleaned up these indictments. You've scaled them down. You've satisfied a trip all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Dom, I'm ready for trial. Let's get to it. When's that gonna
CNN
happen?
CNN also reporting a little bit more on this. The superseding indictment cuts language about the former president's interactions with senior Justice Department officials, as mentioned in the Post, Jeffrey Clark, and adds language describing when Trump was acting as a candidate and not the president. Here's a quote. The defendant had no official responsibilities related to the certification proceeding, and he did not have a personal interest as a candidate in being named the winner of the election, the superseding indictment says in a line that wasn't in the original indictment. In several instances, prosecutors repeatedly added language describing Trump as a quote-unquote candidate and descriptions of his alleged co-conspirators as individuals who were not, quote, government officials during the conspiracies and were instead acting in their private capacity. In another section, the special counsel's office described the lawsuit that Trump's campaign filed regarding the results in Georgia, which he narrowly lost. The old indictment said the lawsuit was filed in his name, but the reworked indictment says it was filed in his capacity as the candidate for president. So, going back and editing, cleaning it up just a little bit, made it, 36 pages instead of 45 pages, something like that. Okay, let's roll, baby. That's fine with me.
Well, it also made it 20% more likely the panelists of the Devil's Advocates might read the new indictments, Dom. But we usually leave that for a guy like James Santel.
Right.
Hopefully he'll be able to join us on Friday. We'll certainly review the new indictments, and we'd love to talk to you. I've been missing our audience, Dom. It's been a few days away. I got political withdrawal symptoms going on. 844-967-2789. The phone lines, they're working. And you know what? The texts so far today, they've been scarce because people are still under the assumption no one's reading the text line. That's not true. I'm back. I'm in the house. I'm reading the text. Dom, bless so. Doesn't read the indictments. Doesn't read the text line. 844-967-2789. It's a phone number. It's a text number. And we've got some exciting news. Tim Walz and Gwen Walz coming to the great state of Wisconsin, coming to Milwaukee on Monday. I suspect they'll be at Labor Fest. We've got an interview scheduled with the current vice president, with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. They'll sit down with CNN's Dana Bash on Thursday, and that'll be post Crute and Lacrosse live at the Trump Town Hall, moderated by Tulsi Gabbard, former Democratic president.
Is that official? I mean, is that
that is official? That came from the campaign. They sent it to me.
Ooh.
If I've announced it on the air, it's official.
It must be true.
Unlike The Hill and TMZ with their Beyonce news. Come back. More Devil's Advocates. Join us. 844-96-PARTY.
Welcome to my house. It's my house.
designed jewelry, and plenty of other items delivered straight to your door or to family and friends.
The Devil's Advocates. Sausage making never looked so good.
And we are back from the 420 break. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Love it when you join the political party. All are welcome at 844-967-2789.
Dominic, do you recognize that music? That's the Free
vaguely.
Willy theme song. I don't think I've heard this one since Joe was chasing Trish around in college. What'd he say to her, Dom?
What did Joe say to Trish? You brought it up, man. You say it. I'm not going there, man.
Joe, our friend Joe, who was a little over-sexualized. Joe made an implication that he had named little Joe something to do with like Little Rocket Man or
the missile
or something of that sort. And his, girl of the moment, because there was another one coming over later, but the woman he happened to be standing there with, Trish, said, "That's not its name, Joe. You call it Willie," and said, "Let's free Willie." And, we tell that story about every other year because Joe will never live it down. And this one, Dom, going out not just for our pal Joe, but also for RFK Jr. He's got his own little Free Willy story, and I want you to tell it.
Oh, man. I don't have it in front of me. I didn't know we were going there at this time, and I don't have it.
What do you think all the Free Willy talk was
I
about?
got it, but I'm a little locked up. You're going to have to bear with me for just a moment. I believe it was from The Hill. Let's see if I can find this. All right, here we go. I got you. Environmental group calls for investigation into reported RFK Jr. whale decapitation. Whale decapitation. I didn't know that was
Willie's not going to like that story.
No, right? An environmental advocacy group called for former independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be investigated regarding a resurfaced report in which his daughter, Kick Kennedy, said he cut the head off a dead whale.
But how does one do that? Does one have a whale guillotine at the house? I mean, whales are big, aren't they? It implies, just it's in the name, big whale.
I don't know,
It's
man.
a monumental task.
It would seem. Now, the Center for Biological Diversity Action Fund, yes.
Wait, is this another roadkill story? Where did that whale get hit on the highway, RFK Jr.?
Again, The Hill. This is The Hill. They were wrong about Beyonce, but this is apparently an old story coming back around. As mentioned, the Center for Biological Diversity Action Fund issued a letter Monday telling the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration that it is, quote, illegal to possess any part of an animal, dead or alive, under both the Marine Mammal Protection Act and Endangered Species Act, and that the government agency should open an investigation. Kennedy's daughter, Kick, in 2012, told Town and Country magazine that her father, an environmental lawyer, cut off a whale's head around 1994 after the mammal washed up on the shore at Hyannisport, Massachusetts. Now, The Hill reached out to Kennedy's campaign for a comment. The story from Town and Country began to recirculate again this week after Kennedy ended his presidential campaign and endorsed Trump. The Center for Biological Diversity Action Fund pointed to the letter in its submission to NOAA. In the Town and Country article from 2012, Kick said her father bungee cord the animal to the top of his car and drove it across state lines to Mount Kisco, New York.
Are you freaking kidding me? He did a Mitt Romney with a whale? I mean, how does one put a whale on the luggage rack? A smaller whale? A baby whale? This is getting sadder, Dom.
It's like Clark Griswold and his mother-in-law. All right, here's a quote from the kid.
Don't forget about the dog.
Poor little guy probably kept up for a mile or so. All right, here's the quote. This is okay. Hang on. A quote from Kick, RFK Jr.'s daughter. Every time we accelerated on the highway, whale juice would pour into the windows of the car. And it was the rankest thing on the planet. We all had plastic bags over our heads with the mouth holes cut out, and people on the highway were giving us the finger. But that was just normal day-to-day stuff for us.
The bags probably would have been more effective if the Kenny kids hadn't cut the mouth holes. If you know what I'm saying.
Well, you never know.
He thinned the herd.
No, how Kennedy is acting, with the bear carcass and the whale carcass. He might have just strapped him up on top as well. The environmental.
Can you imagine? I mean, when I was a teenager, Dom, I didn't want to wear the wrong sneakers for fear of being ostracized. You know, have you ever made your mom pick you up the road a little bit, or your teenagers? Maybe they've done that to you. I know I'm more like the carpool guy now, but if I came driving up with the kids in the car and a whale strapped on the top, Dom,
a rotting whale with whale juice rolling into the car every time he accelerated on the highway.
Are we sure this whale died of natural causes? Was Kennedy fishing with dynamite?
The environmental group, quote, "There are good reasons why it is illegal for any person to collect or keep parts of any endangered species. Most importantly, vital research opportunities are lost when individuals scavenge a wildlife carcass and interfere with the work of scientists. This is particularly true of marine mammals, which are some of the most difficult wildlife species in the world to study." Now, as The Hill notes, this is the second bizarre animal story involving Kennedy to emerge this month. Earlier in August, he said he dumped a dead bear cub in New York Central Park a decade ago. Yeah, and this guy just endorsed, Trump. So not weird at all. Totally normal. This is great. Good job, Republicans, megas. I mean, and how did you get the whale out of the car? That's got to be heavy, right? I mean, did he have help?
I'm gonna need a little hand here, kids. You know, as the moving has progressed this week, I've noted my kids have been a little scarcer. One's got the excuse that I'm
at school. Yeah, I gotta work. I gotta go to school.
The other one's been hanging out at grandma's. Like he's the good grandson suddenly. Yeah. I'm going to grandma's. She probably needs to see me before I go to college and all that moving stuff gets done. By the way, Dom, I would perceive a third story because RFK Jr. also denied barbecuing and eating a dog, but didn't deny sexually assaulting the nanny. Thought it was more important to deny the dog story than the nanny story.
And the worm in the brain thing, too.
Well, that really happened. Come back, more devils.
Civic Media Network.
Civic Media News. I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. Governor Evers and the Department of Natural Resources introduced an update for Wisconsin's clean water standards this month that brings Wisconsin in line with federal rules. Republicans and the governor continue to disagree over who should be responsible for PFAS cleanup. Harmful algae blooms are getting more common. That's according to the Environmental Protection Agency. John Rumpler of Environment America says large factory farms are one of the main reasons.
That volume of manure, whether it's spread on crops or otherwise managed, it just all too often winds its way from the croplands to rivers and lakes and streams.
The EPA is considering updating regulations on waste from slaughterhouses for the first time in 40 years. I'm Terry Bell, Civic Media News. Now, here's what you need to know closer to home.
This is news from WMDX Madison. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. A Pittsburgh basketball court has been out of service much of the summer because of vandalism happening over and over again. Pittsburgh police believe multiple times now someone has driven on the court, ruining the tiles. Dream Court is unique. There aren't many of them across the country, so fixing it is a huge expense and a huge time suck. Authorities talked to neighbors and asked if they had security cameras, and they finally have a lead. A multicolor pickup truck. They've released photos. It's red in the front with a black bed. If you think you've seen that truck, call Pittsburgh Police. Meanwhile, people are reporting break-ins at the dog park. According to WKOW, one couple had their windows smashed and a person told the outlet it's becoming a more common trend there. That's left dog owners worried when they come to let their pet get some exercise. Middleton police say they'll release more information soon, but for now, they advise people don't leave any valuables in their cars at the dog park. And that's what you need to know. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson, WMDX News.
On your entertainment beat, I'm Pete Schwaba. We've come a long way since Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore were forbidden to be seen in the same bed on the Dick Van Dyke Show. These days on cable TV, F-bombs drop, heads are blown off, and there are naked bodies aplenty. Not sure which era is better. But did you know that even the wholesome 1950s sitcom Leave It to Beaver battled network censors? And it had nothing to do with the title character's name. According to Cracked.com, an early episode of the show had Wally and the Beav get a pet alligator they wanted to keep in the toilet. The network said absolutely not, because showing toilets on network television in 1957 was an absolute not happening. Coincidentally, on that same episode, Wally and the Beav, love saying that, try to get their pet alligator to drink their dad's brandy. Then they drink some themselves, making the beaver day drunk. The network had no problem with that. It was the household item people do disgusting things to every day that they took issue with, even if they put the seat down when they were done. For more showbiz fun, tune in to Nightlight with me, Pete Schwaba, weeknights from 7 to 9 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network.
You can always continue the conversation on social media. Share your thoughts when you find and follow Civic Media on Facebook, X, and Instagram.
I'm meteorologist Mace Michaels. A slight shower chance this evening, otherwise mostly cloudy and a low in the upper 60s. Patchy early fog, otherwise a mixture of sun and clouds, and highs in the low 80s for Wednesday. Another chance of showers and storms Thursday, high mid-80s. Currently it's 87.
What's better than one win? 3 wins. With Straight Savings, you keep your own phone, get one line for only $25 a month with real unlimited data, and get rewarded with a $200 phone credit after 12 months. It's a win-win-win. Head to Walmart or visit straighttalk.com today. Switch to Straight Talk. Less dollars, more cents. Straight Savings plan enrollment requires compatible unlocked device and new line of service. Bonus device credit requires 12 months of active service. Offer ends if eligibility requirements are no longer met. Taxes and fees apply. For network management practices, see Straight Talk's terms and conditions.
Is doing it yourself not working out? Don't need the whole building for your business anymore? Call Alta's Commercial Real Estate. They'll help you find quality tenants to fill your vacancies. They market, they show, they negotiate the terms. They do all the legwork and keep you informed. Call Alta's Commercial Real Estate at 608-338-1101. 608-338-1101.
Hey everybody, join us next time for a Hump Day edition. Pat Kreitlow of Up North News, Trigby Olson, Lincoln Project, and much more. Be here.
Grass-fed, locally raised, 100% organic. The Devil's Advocates.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Brandy is a fine girl, but if her hubby brought home a whale strapped to the car, would she cook it up in a pot and serve it to the fam, or would she go running for the hills seeking a divorce?
I mean, what is it
It's
with
crazy.
this guy, RFK Jr. and dead animals, man?
And I always liked his wife. His wife is relatively famous, Cheryl Hines. She's the wife in Curb Your Enthusiasm. She had moved on from Larry David, I think, to who was the guy from Cheers? The actor that was Sam Malone in Cheers.
Ted Danson.
Ted Danson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, seemed like a very nice woman. Married to a very cuckoo man.
Who plays
Robert
with
Kennedy
animal
just got a
carcasses.
thing for
Animal
dead animals.
carcasses. I mean, what, dude? Really? What?
With the juices just rolling down
How
the hood.
did you get it on the car? I mean, how? How did that happen? I want to
can
know
I
that.
tell
And then I want to know, how did you decapitate it? I mean, I'm thinking about like what I have at my house to cut the head off a whale. I mean, I guess I got a butcher knife, but that seems like that'd take a long time, man.
Can I tell a little story? You know, in the course of moving, my wife gave away the kids' basketball goal. And we had gotten it from the neighbors because they were not able to move it. And now we felt responsible for getting rid of this basketball goal because we're not going to move it.
What is it, a basketball?
Yeah, like a basketball goal with the weighted base and the big swing arm. You can lift it up to 10 feet or.
Oh, yeah,
higher or
okay, yeah,
whatever.
got you. Okay,
Yeah,
basketball. Okay, yep.
like in
A
the
hoop, yeah.
driveway.
Yep,
The
gotcha.
basketball hoop, but the whole standard and everything.
With the base and everything. Yeah.
So my wife put it on some site, and some nice young guy came to get it, and he showed up with a truck, and it had a ramp. And I've been filling up some trucks lately, at least helping the professional movers do it. And so I was familiar. I knew how the ramp went. He did not. He was unfamiliar with how to put the ramp on his truck. He also brought the truck mostly full of stuff. And the stuff was like, what are the young Latino parties, like when they turn 13, the quinceañeros?
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
I mean, it was filled with like what I only imagine. He borrowed this truck from his buddy who's got some sort of a service where he provides like everything for that party in the back of a truck, because he had like linens, he had like crazy stuff like walls of roses. But what he didn't have is enough room in that truck, possibly for this basketball goal. And my wife was doing something with my son at college. So she's like, yeah, guy's coming at 5:30 to get the basketball goal. Oh, okay. Part why I was absent yesterday. So this guy shows up, and he's got the truck full of junk or nice stuff, but still not really there to make it easier to stick a basketball goal in. But Dom, it was me and this little guy. There was nobody else to help us. I mean, he makes you look enormous. This guy was, if he was 120 pounds soaking wet, and this basketball goal, I swear to God, was like trying to push the entire blocking sled from high school football up a hill all at once, because I had to do all the heavy labor. This guy could not possibly exert enough. So I had to put another roller underneath the rollers and push it up the scale and then pop it off the roller. And I mean, oh my God, dude, I almost had a heart attack. And that was just to get a basketball goal into a truck with a ramp. I cannot imagine the necessary labor and levers and pulley systems to get a freaking whale on my car. You know what I mean? Just the exertion. But, buddy, I couldn't move the king size mattress. You know what I mean? That's like trying to move Jell-O at like 300 pounds on your shoulder. How do you get that on top of your car with a whale, a slimy, dead, lubricated whale?
A rotting whale? Quote, every time we accelerated on the highway, whale juice would pour into the windows of the car, and it was the rankest thing on the planet. People on the highway were giving us the finger, but that was just normal day-to-day stuff for us. I mean, really, is that a normal day? Or are you always driving around with dead whales and animals on your car? I have so many questions.
The enormity of that task, Tom. And I knew if that basketball goal was still sitting there after my wife told me someone was coming to get it, and therefore it checked off her list. But I cannot imagine, dude, the amount of sheer force and will and stubbornness and effort just to get that son of a bitch on top of your minivan, your station wagon, and the enormity of the weight on the car. It's got to be bad for the suspension. Certainly not going to make the interior smell any better.
It's just,
I bet those kids smell like tuna whale to this day. Like, I mean, I don't like eating tuna fish is just fine, but I hate eating it because your breath smells like it. I couldn't imagine smelling like that coming out of every pore for days or weeks or months.
What are you doing, Dad? Dad? What are you doing? And then what? He gets it home and obviously gets it off the car and then proceeds to cut off its head.
Plan. Well, that's just the first step in making your whale steaks, Dom.
Is that? Come on, man. He wasn't eating it. You're not going to pick up whale kill at the beach and go and eat it. I mean, it's not like you hit it with a car. It's like, oh, well, this is Wisconsin. We could take that deer. You know what I mean? He went and got the whale.
But why is he cutting the head off? Why is he cutting the head off? I mean, unless you're doing like, the big game head mounts, Who does a whale head mount, right?
Robert Kennedy Jr.?
Running that bad boy up to the taxidermist? What did you have in mind? And you must have elicited the entire family. Plus, I got to think like a bobcat, a forklift. You would not physically have the strength to put anything over,
Couple
400
hundred pounds? I mean, maybe, man. Maybe. I mean, even a couple 100 pounds, especially if it's
getting it up over your head,
slippery and rotting, and no. I mean, how do you do it? Maybe a couple of grappling hooks? I don't know. I think we should find out. I want to hear that story.
I want to party with you, cowboy.
Oh God, what?
844-967-2789.
Well, the good news is he has dropped out of the presidential race.
He's on the ballot in Wisconsin.
He's on the ballot in lots of states. I did see a headline that he may not necessarily give Trump the boost that he wants. He's still on the ballot in Wisconsin. He's still on the ballot in Michigan. I think he's on the ballot in like 4 other states. So it's still going to pull votes from Trump, I would imagine.
Probably. I don't think there's a lot of Harris voters that are contemplative of voting for RFK now that he's remained on the ballot. When we were up in college, I had a neighbor, catty corner, down on the far end of the dorm hallway, Dom. And I'm a freshman, but this guy, he had some living under his belt. He was a sophomore.
Ooh.
And this guy, apparently a little outdoorsy, I'm city slicker coming. I guess I lived as rural as Mount Horeb, but that's a town. That's not really rural. Not where I was.
Do you have sidewalks, and could you order pizza? Did you have cable television?
Well, that's not true. Where I was technically was out of town. Jeff is sitting here messaging me. He was the farmer next door when I was living out in Mount Horeb. So I guess I was rural, but never perceived that as super rural. But, as I'm telling this story, Dom, and you interrupt me, I totally forgotten what the purpose was of telling it in the first place.
All right, then. 844-967-2789. The Kennedy bump.
Oh, here's the reason. And it goes along with the whale and because the neighbor guy up in La Crosse, like the second day of school, he comes walking home and he's got a beaver over his shoulder. And I mean, like the animal, with the big flat, and he apparently was a trapper, Dom. And I'm like, what are you going to do with that beaver in your room? And his answer was, well, I got to skin it. He was skinning beaver in his dorm room. And a little bit later, as we got to know each other just a little bit better, I found out he also grew some really good weed in his dorm room, Dom.
Well,
but you
can forgive a guy for that then.
I got to tell you, as a kid coming from Mount Horeb who had not seen a lot of beavers walking down the hallway prior, it was an experience, Dom. And let's just say the smell. It stung the nostrils.
Stings the nostrils.
Pungent.
So how? What do you think? A dead ass whale that been laying on the beach for God knows how long? What do you that smells like? Obviously, the daughter said it was rank, but here's the other thing: he drove it across state lines. You know what I'm saying? I think that advances the charge.
Are you implying he sexually trafficked a whale, Dom?
No, not
and
at all. But once you cross state lines doing any of that kind of stuff, you can increase your liability, let's say.
Interesting. 844-967-2789. You can
wow.
always be a part
of
this big program.
What a weird dude, for real.
It's a whale of a show we're having here, but your participation always encouraged. Sherry from Horror texted in. Hi, Devils and friends. That's you, Rich, your friends. Here's more. I thought SCOTUS ruled a candidate could not be on selected states' ballots. Well, you could not allow a singular state to exclude the nominee of one of the two national parties in the case of Donald Trump. I thought it was the 14th Amendment attacks on Donald Trump in Colorado, I think, and other states, Secretary of States and Attorney Generals were trying to remove Trump from the ballot. And effectively, the Supreme Court said, no, you can't selectively. Yeah, Michael from the 608 who texted that in points out, Colorado 14th Amendment. You could not selectively exclude him from one state when it factors into the Electoral College math. 844-967-2789. Whale shipping Bobby Kennedy Jr. will be on the ballot in the great state of Wisconsin. So I wonder if it will have just a bit of a fishy smell, that ballot. 844-967-2789. It's been a while. CJ, how you been, CJ? And I'm afraid to ask, but I hope you're well.
Hello, CJ.
Oh, just place holding a spot in line. Figured he wouldn't even start monitoring for like another hour.
Goodbye,
Well,
CJ.
Too bad you wasted your one opportunity, your glorious opportunity today, CJ. So we've got some exciting news. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has dropped out of the race, endorsed Donald Trump. He claimed he wanted to withdraw himself from the swing state ballots, but in the state of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Elections Commission has placed him on the ballot, and that's the state we care most about.
The vote
But I
was
also
5-1. Who do you think the one was, Crute?
Spindell?
I mean, I don't know, but I'd guess.
Like, who would not want to see Kennedy on the ballot? Who knows? The most Trumpiest one of them all, fake elector, Bob Spindell, who also happens to be a Wisconsin elections commissioner. Why he's not under indictment? Well, we did see Josh Call down there, and a few in the audience were asking that day. Ask him about the fake electors. Broadly, we kind of did. And, of course, he's like, it's the only job I've ever had in my life where you can literally say, sorry, I can't talk about it. As a public servant, active investigations are not a topic for discussion, or we would have reported right here on the greatest radio show ever whether or not Ron Johnson will be under future criminal indictment related to his activities in the J6. Donald Trump got new indictments today. We'll talk about it, and you can be a part of the show. Except for you, CJ. You blew your big chance. Unless you got a really good whale story. You got to top RFK Jr.'s whale story. That's dedication. More Devil's Advocates.
You're a fine girl. What a good wife you would be. Such a fine my life, my love and my lady.
This is Chad Spade. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed by the hatred and misinformation that consumes our world, but I also know that we cannot build a house of justice and inclusion on a foundation of hatred and lies. We have to practice what we preach. At Chad's Design Build, we confront injustice the same way we confront a poorly built home, with love, compassion, intelligence, and persistence. We engage our community the way we engage our clients, with honesty and humility and the dogged determination that we can do better. Chad's Design Build, remodeling done well with love.
It is one of the most important business decisions you will make, selling your commercial building. It should involve making a plan to maximize your sale price through effective and responsive marketing. Your plan should also include a clear understanding of tax consequences. You need the professionals at Altus Commercial Real Estate to guide your success. Experience and responsive professionals make all the difference. Make your plan to sell. Call Altus Commercial Real Estate today at 608-338-1101. Partner now with the greatest radio show ever and start getting return on your investment immediately. The Devil's Advocates are a small business just like you, and like you, we can't afford advertising that offers no return. The Devil's Advocates listeners support our sponsors and the mission. Tell you when your messages are working and put cash in your register. So invest your ad dollars to reach our raving Madison and Dane County fans, or affordably reach the whole state, Chicago, Minneapolis, and our nationwide stream audience today. The Devil's Advocates can be the voice of your business, hold special events at your location, interview your staff for satisfied customers to lift your business. Contact us today, Crute at DARNWY.com,
The Devil's Advocates, radio for the 99%.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Phone lines are open 844-967-2789. Talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s whale exploits. Did find this one at the Raw store talking about him and the ballot and wanted to clarify. I knew there was a couple of states. Now we got some more information. I want to share it with you, our fair audience. When Kennedy suspended his campaign, he said he would take himself off the ballot in every battleground state to avoid stealing votes from Trump. But according to this article, it appears he cannot do that in a majority of the contests. So far, according to analyst Adam Carlson, Kennedy cannot take himself off the ballot in Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Wisconsin due to various state laws and past deadlines. The most recent of these developments came today as the Wisconsin Elections Commission voted 5-1 that Kennedy could not be removed from the state. Per Semaphor's Dave Weigel, formerly of the Washington Post, the Trump campaign is particularly concerned about Kennedy's presence on the ballot in Nevada, North Carolina, and Wisconsin, where the largest number of Kennedy voters rank Trump as their second choice. In Michigan, they appear to be more evenly split. Now, some experts believe Kennedy was running to peel off votes from Democrats to help reelect Trump. Some Republican mega donors appear to think along those same lines. Tim Mullen, a GOP-aligned railroad magnate and one of the largest contributors of campaign money in the 24 cycle, contributed millions of dollars to a super PAC backing Kennedy. At the same time, he funded GOP candidates. All of this comes as Kennedy grows even closer to Trump and the campaign. Former president has added Kennedy to his presidential transition team and has toyed with the idea of giving him a cabinet position in his administration, perhaps ahead of NOAA, since he apparently has some expertise in, whaling.
844-967-2789. Dom, topically, I think we can move on.
Put a fork in it.
Call me Ahab. Someone
Old
texted
man in the sea.
It was an angry sea that day, my friend. Someone texted in. They heard and I don't know if I really need to repeat this, but the decapitation method was not whale guillotine. It was a freaking chainsaw.
What? Texas Chainsaw Massacre style, man? What?
Apparently, Robert Kennedy Jr., after crossing state lines with a whale strapped to the family roadster, reportedly utilized a chainsaw. Although I have not independently verified the facts of that account that comes from our text line, but apparently someone on Stephanie Miller said it, so it must be true.
Wow. Well, I mean, lifestyles of the rich and famous. I mean, how do you pass your time?
Not whaling. Not hauling whales.
I don't think that's whaling.
Not getting on the Jersey.
I don't think taking a whale carcass off the beach, strapping it to the hood of your car, driving it across state lines, dumping it in your garage, and cutting its head off with a chainsaw would be the traditional definition of whaling.
And one other quick question. The ocean out there, right? Beyond the sandy beach, assumably. And then the parking lot. They had to drag that whale out to the car, Dom. I mean, have you ever tried to drive your car on sand?
It
can be a really futile effort. That's about as smart as me driving my Jeep on a snowmobile trail last winter. In like 45-degree heat where the pack was melting and it just kind of sank. How do you get the whale from the ocean side back to the car to plop it on the car, to haul it across state lines, to get out the chainsaw to decapitate the whale, and all the kids in the back seat thinking, God, I wish it were me.
And then so maybe he's keeping the skull. I mean, I'm not clear. Like what do you do now? All right, hey, I got this head, all this effort. I mean, what's the
I'm
plan?
telling you, man, it's a head mount. It's like a deer. Like you've seen the head mounted deer.
So what do you do with the rest of the whale, man? You can't just throw it in the dumpster. You got to keep it in the garage and slice it up and stick it in the garbage for like week after week after week. Come on. Well, I used to have those parties at my old crib up in Appleton when my birthday parties.
Oh, I've been summer loving parties.
Yeah, man, and we get the pig roast, right? You got to get the pig and eat all the pork, and then at the end we'd take that pig roast, and I took it to the office. We had a dumpster. That is, threw it in the dumpster. Well, it was bad timing because apparently they had come recently, so they didn't come for a while. And after a few days, man, I had the biggest flies ever, like all over my black car, which was parked next to the dumpster, because this thing was just getting eaten alive. The Magus must have been 6 inches long. It was the most nastiest thing I could ever possibly imagine. So a whale carcass is a little bit bigger than a pig. I'm just saying.
Dom, you introduced me to Jesse Dupree in college.
Yeah.
This guy,
I'm a lumberjack, baby.
Plays the chainsaw on this album, does he not?
He sure does.
Do you think he learned from RFK Jr.? I think that makes him the most qualified candidate on the ballot. If you got to clear a whale carcass or something of the sort.
Or some lumber. I don't know.
One wonders how he got a parasitic brain worm, though, Don.
Yeah,
Apparently,
weird.
It's because he'll eat anything. I mean, I've known some dudes that'll eat some stuff. They got nothing on RFK Jr. More Devil's Advocates.
That's the way we like it.
On our next show, despite the grueling heat, we'll be here talking to Mike McCabe from Substack.
DevilRadioswag.com. You've asked for it for over a decade. We've finally gotten out of our dead and responded. DevilRadioswag.com. T-shirt in Dom's favorite slimming black, white, or gray. DevilRadioswag.com. Crew necks, hoodies, coffee mugs, exclusive merchandise of the greatest radio show ever. Only at the DevilRadioswag.com, because we got bills too.
Enjoying this local program? Find the complete Civic Media lineup at civicmedia.us or the Civic Media app. You're listening to Mad Radio, WMDX 1580 AM Columbus, W224EG Madison, and always streaming on the Civic Media app.
ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. Special Counsel Jack Smith in a superseding grand jury indictment charging Donald Trump in the January 6th election subversion case. Those new charges, the Supreme follows the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. ABC's Aaron Katersky has more.
Special Counsel Jack Smith is not going to be cowed by the Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity or by a federal judge in Florida's recent decision to toss the indictment against former President Trump, charging him with mishandling classified material. Jack Smith just decided to appeal that ruling to the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, and now he has filed a superseding indictment in the January 6th election subversion case in Washington.
Trump's attorneys have not responded. Vice President Kamala Harris and running mate Tim Walz will sit for their first joint media interview. CNN announced today that interview takes place this week. In Atlanta, 2 people were killed and a third person injured at a Delta Airlines maintenance facility at Atlanta's airport. This is ABC News.
This news report is sponsored by Wisconsin Capital Management LLC, serving their clients for 40 years. Visit wiscap.com. Media News. I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. Be careful outside again today. Excessive heat warnings and advisories are in effect for a second straight day. Corey Zystro is helping her daughter move into her dorm at UW Milwaukee. Yesterday,
temperatures of the summer. A heat index above 105 degrees in parts of Milwaukee yesterday. A northern Wisconsin community is asking for state and federal help to negotiate road access with tribal officials. The Lac du Flambeau tribe and the town of Lac du Flambeau have been in talks for more than a year after the tribe cut off public access to roads on the reservation that lead to private homes. Tribal leaders want the town to pay easements that have been neglected for more than a decade. I'm Terry Bell, Civic Media News. Here's what you need to know closer to home.
This is news from WMDX Madison. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. We've got another hot one today. Our high is 93, according to the National Weather Service, but it'll be so humid that it'll feel like it's over 100 again. Please drink tons of water, stay inside whenever possible, and keep an eye out for those signs of heat illness and heat stroke. Strong storms can be common after intense systems like this heat wave, so we may see some this afternoon and into the evening. But the good news is that the temperatures should only be in the 80s tomorrow. And a new study shows what many students and Madisonians already know. A majority of off-campus student housing here in Madison is unaffordable. The city teamed up with UW-Madison for a first-of-its-kind study looking at housing affordability for students. Nearly 70% of rentals cost too much, with students spending over $1,000 per month. Plus, the least expensive units are furthest from campus and the most rundown. According to the study, UW-Madison has one of the most expensive housing markets of all Big Ten schools. And that's what you need to know. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson, WMDX News.
The Packers add a new quarterback. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. The Packers traded for Malik Willis, a third-year quarterback, to the Tennessee Titans. In return, the Titans get a 7th-round draft pick next year. Willis, on mastering the progressions and learning a new NFL playbook in Green Bay.
You know, progressions are a part of quarterback play wherever you're at, so I just felt like you get to different ones at this level, and you with a new team and new people, so you just got to get used to it.
College football, the Badgers getting ready for their first game of the season Friday, and they host Western Michigan. Luke Fickell on what they know about the Broncos.
We know as little as we ever have known, right? I mean, they got a new offensive coordinator, they got a new defensive coordinator, and they got a new special teams coordinator. So what do you know, right? Obviously, the head coach is an offensive guy. What the head coach has done, or is it more of the Walt Bell? And, you know, are they going to be the Louisiana Lafayette where the defensive coordinator came from? I mean, so there's a lot of unknowns. You know, even with transfers and things like that, there's still a lot of unknowns.
That's Badgers head coach Luke Fickell. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
This is your local Civic Media radio station. Want to hear even more? Anytime? Find all of it at civicmedia.us.
I'm meteorologist Mace Michaels. A slight shower chance this evening, otherwise mostly cloudy and a low in the upper 60s. Patchy early fog, otherwise a mixture of sun and clouds and highs in the low 80s for Wednesday. Another chance of showers and storms Thursday, high mid-80s. Currently it's 87.
Wisconsin summers are too short, so this year we decided to make the most of it. Crute called Go Landscaping, and Cody and his team will take it from here. Go Landscaping can bring your jungle under control or create the lasting outdoor living space you've always dreamed about. Specializing in stone and paver construction, Go Landscaping are the landscaping pros you need. Do what Crute did. Call Cody at Go Landscaping today to get started. 608-807-9245.
Wisconsin Capital Management in Madison is a registered investment advisory firm and has been serving their clients for the past 40 years. The firm is focused on providing investment advisory services to its affiliated mutual funds. Their approach to investment management is designed to provide competitive performance over the entire business cycle. Their clients rely on them to manage their assets through the fluctuations of market cycles, and they strive to outperform over the long term. For information, visit wiscap.com.
Maggie Dawn.
Did you know that dark money groups are spending millions to hire paid canvassers in Wisconsin on behalf of Donald Trump? I'll tell you all about it next.
The Maggie Dawn Show, weekday afternoons at 2.
You're listening to Mad Radio.
The Devil's Advocates radio show is broadcast under a time brokerage agreement between Devil Radio and Civic Media, Inc. Some portions of this program may be pre-recorded. Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever, and due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves and corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. Now live from the Civic Media Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
And now, here's your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, a whale of a Tuesday edition. Hope you're enjoying it so far. More than Willie did.
Free Willie. Free Willie. So RFK Jr. apparently chopped off this head of a whale, right? So I have some further information I want to clarify and articulate specifically, and this coming from, I guess, the New York Daily News. I found it on The Drudge, so you know it's true. We talked about the daughter, Kick is her nickname. Her 2012 interview with Town and Country, she recounted that she was 6 years old when a dead whale washed up onto a beach at Squaw Island in Hyannis Port. Her father got wind of it, and because he was fascinated by animal skulls and skeletons, he went to the beach lugging a chainsaw, hacked off the whale's head, and secured it to the family's minivan roof with bungee cords.
So it's more plausible because it wasn't the entire carcass of the whale. It was just the whale head pop strapped on the Buick, or pardon me, probably the Chrysler Town and Country. Back
then, apparently Kick was 6 years old at the time. RFK Jr. is no stranger to roadkill, telling the reporters in Albany earlier this month he had a freezer full of it. He's got...
Done everybody?
I mean, what? What, dude? Oh, and then as I was, finding this information, I also saw Ben Affleck linked to Kick Kennedy amid J-Lo divorce. So apparently Ben Affleck, now newly separated from J-Lo, has been spotted in L.A. with Kick Kennedy, the child of RFK Jr., who told the story about the old man taking the chainsaw to the beach and cutting off the head of the whale. So that's how you bring it back to the, current times, I guess. I mean,
that
would that stick with you, man? You're 6
yes,
years old.
I was going to say traumatized for life.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
Oozing blood and guts on top of Dad's minivan, and you're riding home with plastic bags over your head. Only the mouth. They were hiding. They were like Saints fans wearing those plastic bags.
Come on, man. I mean, and I know I'm not a real outdoorsy guy, but I did have a chainsaw once in my life. I know how to use a chainsaw. I've gone out to cut some things down with chainsaws.
Know what
happens? You know what happens with chainsaws? You get sawdust all over you. What do you think was spraying out when he was cutting off this whale's head? He was covered in it. So where do you think the brain worm came from? I mean, he's got a freezer full of roadkill. What? Yeah, and he just endorsed Donald Trump. No, it's not a weird campaign, not a weird situation. Mega's not weird at all.
Let me point one thing out, just so you don't perceive my little buddy as being elitist, but consider the fact he's a Kennedy. He doesn't have to eat roadkill. There's always been food in the cupboards. He wants to eat roadkill. He needs
to eat roadkill.
That is a lifestyle choice he has made. Not out of necessity, not to feed his starving family, because we're not making light of the impoverished. But you never met a broke Kennedy, Dom. Except in the brain.
I mean, definitely broke in the brain.
And I would predict that Trump, when he needs to mix it up, like in October, Dom, he's going to go tap out that whale carcass dragon. This is goat, not dog eating, brain worm having Robert Kennedy Jr. and make him
and that's
the vice president instead of J.D. Vance.
That's the upgrade from J.D. Vance?
Well, if it's not Kennedy, it's Putin's favorite Tulsi Gabbard. One or the other. She's going to be the moderator of the town hall. She's also joined the Trump campaign. She'll be in La Crosse on Thursday. I'll bring photos, Tom.
Ooh. Yeah,
So we
not
meet back here on Friday. I'll tell you how it went.
844-967-2789. Let's get to it. Dick from the Garage. What's up, Dick? Welcome. What do you got for us?
Well, is he morphing towards Jeffrey Dahmer for crying out loud?
I don't know, man. Presumably, it sounds like all these animals were dead prior to him picking that up, but, I don't know.
Well, okay.
I don't know. If he's...
Has anyone clarified if Kennedy Jr. has tried human flesh? Has anyone asked? Just didn't rule it out. Let's hope.
And I'm wondering, does he have any pets? Like right now, does he have pets? Does he have a dog? Does he have a cat? Does he have a fish?
If I was one of his pets, I would seek cover.
I'd rather go on a walk with Christy Gnome.
But I called about. I heard a caller from Stoughton on Todd Alva's show talking about that Harris has no plans for anything. She maps out just about everything she wants to do, for crying out loud. First of all, she talks a lot about housing, and in the sense of housing, this guy's whole thing is we don't need housing because they're all illegal immigrants coming here that need it. So massive deportation, and we don't need any more housing.
Well, Dick, they're going to clear the parks in La Crosse of the homeless people before the Trump rally anticipated on Thursday. So you don't need homes. You just move them along.
Right.
Yeah, you know how
But
the song
the whole
goes,
thing,
Dick.
guys.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
But the whole thing, she maps out everything. She talks about the price gouging. What is CJ listening to?
Well, I don't know.
He doesn't know.
Dick, we appreciate you listening to us, but I'm hearing a bit of us echoing in the background, man. Don't care what CJ listens to. He just sits there on hold indefinitely. And when his time comes, he wasn't ready. So he can sit there on hold for another 2 hours. But if you're listening,
Dick,
CJ,
we talked.
you
thanks for
blew
the
your
call,
shot.
man. I appreciate the call, dude. We talked a little bit about an op-ed from the Wall Street Journal the other day, and there's another article in there today, Richard Rubin, entitled "Kamala Harris's Tax Increases and Cuts Take Shape." Taxes would go up for the high-income households. Most American taxes would be unchanged or lower, and many parents would get new breaks. So there are policy proposals out there from the Harris-Walz campaign. They have scheduled their first quote-unquote interview together on CNN this coming Thursday. Now, that's not going to alleviate, Mega's whining and moaning and bitching. They're going to continue to do that because that's all they have. Look at their guy. They take their lead from Donald Trump, who whines and moans and bitches about everything.
And that's kind of my lane.
You know what I'm talking about, Crute. I mean, we have the grievances on Fridays, but these cats do it every day. And to my understanding, the tax plan as proposed right now, as it stands, between Harris's plan and Trump's plan, well, Harris's is geared towards, more those without under $400,000 of income would not see any tax increases whatsoever. And she actually has offsets. It would actually reduce the deficit over the course of 10 years, whereas Trump's plan, of course, gives tax breaks to the wealthy and adds to the deficit. So, again, these things, it's one thing to sit there and say, well, we don't know anything. It's another thing to actively not look, not read, not understand, not compare what has been printed, what has been put out by both these campaigns on their tax policy. It's there. The Wall Street Journal has it right now.
But if you let the Trump tax cuts sunset, especially the benefits for, let's say, private jet owners, Tom, then how would Ron Johnson take his 3 family private jets, and put them into service and to fleet and get all the tax benefits why I think they need to be extended, Dom, or what would be the incentive for private travel to stay away from the rabble rousers like you and I on commercial airline flights. I mean, I told you, I saw Ron Johnson at Trump Tower the Monday of the DNC, and he told the audience, the media assembled, it's tough being a billionaire, Dom.
Yeah, man. It's so tough.
It's tough. You know, not everyone can handle the pressure of being a billionaire. Ron looks around that room and thinks, well, there might only be a couple of 100 millionaires here. Me and Rick Scott, for example. He didn't say that, but he did say it was tough to be a billionaire. I didn't share his sentiment.
When are rich white men gonna catch a break in this country?
Dom wanted to tell you what Donald Trump had to say about Kamala Harris. Apparently, they've locked down the debate details.
Oh, I don't know. I still see reporting that they have not nailed down whether or not the mics will be on or
no,
not.
They have nailed down that.
Right now, CNN reporting Harris camp says discussions ongoing over microphone muting as we speak. Just saying what I'm seeing, man. I don't know.
You gonna trust me or Wolf Blitzer?
Where are you getting your source from?
Trump says he'll debate Harris on the nastiest and most unfair ABC news. If they're showing up, and there will be either open or closed mics, they're still going to debate. I think the Harris campaign is doing the reverse trick on them. Reverse psychology. Whatever you do, don't think of elephants. Don't think of elephants. Whatever you do, between now and the end of the commercial, don't think of elephants. But you're thinking of one right now.
Well, I'm just thinking about cutting their heads off and putting them on my car, driving them home.
Well, I have a fascination with skulls and carnage and luggage racks. More devil's advocates.
Oh, you nasty boys.
You're listening to the radio show your mother warned you about, The Devil's Advocates.
And welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Lines are open. Talk or text. Hit us up if you have something to say at 844-967-2789.
Dom, this conversation about RFK Jr. over on MSNBC. They're calling him the Jeffrey Dahmer of the animal kingdom.
What? Come on.
And someone on the text line said, isn't that how serial killers get started?
That's what I'm saying, man. Like I think Rob Zombie redid Halloween and Michael Myers at the beginning of that particular version of it. Of course, John Carpenter's was the best, but Zombies was pretty good. And they show a young Michael Myers, like, snapping the necks of little animals and stuff. Like, yeah, that's it. That's how some of us get started. Sure.
And by the way, Dom, just want to quote my source, just so you know it's not me to blame if Beyonce doesn't show up. Trump begrudgingly agrees to ABC News debate in bonkers rant with muted mics. That's a headline at the Daily Beast. If it's not final, we'll find out soon, Dom. I know it's still being questioned. But here is a statement being made by the Trump campaign on the witch hunt indictment by deranged Jack Smith. You want to hear some of this?
Oh, yes. Let's not forget. Big news today. Special Counsel Jack Smith superseding indictment of Donald Trump. You got to clean up the language a little bit given the U.S. Supreme Court's rulings, let's just say.
Well, here's what Trump is truthy socialing, Dom. In an effort to resurrect a dead witch hunt in Washington, D.C., in an act of desperation, and in order to save face, the illegally appointed special counsel deranged Jack Smith. No air quotes around that, just deranged Jack Smith, capital D, has brought a ridiculous new indictment against me, which has all of the problems of the old indictment and should be dismissed immediately. And that's all caps. His points, his Florida document hoax case has been completely dismissed. He's talking about Eileen Cannon, his appointee to the West Palm Beach federal court, who said, well, maybe Clarence Thomas has a point about the special counselor. Let's throw it out. Well, that is not the January 6th, and I suspect at some point Smith will refile those charges.
He appealed that ruling yesterday.
So, anyways, Trump goes on to say that this is merely an attempt to, all caps, interfere with the election and distract the American people from the catastrophes Kamala Harris has inflicted on our nation.
You know what's interfering with an election is trying to overthrow the government after you lose the election. That's interfering with the election. I mean, I cannot believe that we're still having this conversation. The guy called the mob. He sat on his ass for 3+ hours while his supporters beat the hell out of cops with thin blue liners. You law and order types. Do you know, megas, Republicans, what Donald Trump was doing for over 3 hours while his supporters breached the Capitol and beat the hell out of cops? I'd like to know. Do you know what his involvement was? Do you know who he was talking to the weeks leading up to it? Do you know who he talked to that day? Don't you think these are relevant questions that need answers? I mean, I cannot believe that we're still doing this. I cannot believe that you megas would be like, oh, yeah, totally fine. They tried to overthrow the government. That's fine because it's our guy? Really? That's how low you have sunk?
It gets lower than that, Tom. Wait. Oh, it's worse. Way worse. Lindsey Graham, sort of a sycophant and bootlick for Donald Trump, Republican senator from South Carolina. I
do declare.
Now, Lindsey sidestepped questions on whether or not Trump should attend a January 6th award gala. Didn't want to quite go there. Lindsey Graham sidestepped a question Sunday about whether former President Trump should attend a January 6th award gala that will be hosted at his club in New Jersey next month. So just so we're clear, this is not an event to honor the Capitol Police or something of that sort. This is an event to honor the protesters, the
criminals.
The Stand in the Gap Foundation will be hosting the event, dubbed the J6 Awards Gala on September 5th at the Trump Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey, according to an announcement posted online. And while Trump is listed as an invited guest speaker, Graham didn't say whether the former president should attend the event. The question asked by Jake Tapper, would it be a mistake for him to go? And here's the answer, Dom. See if you find it sufficient. Well, my views of January 6th, I was actually there, that the people who broke into the Capitol and assaulted police officers should go to jail. They committed a crime. There are people very upset about the outcome of the 2020 election. I get it. But Vice President Harris tried to raise bail money for people who burned Minneapolis. See where he's going here, Dom? I don't like that either. So when it comes to parties condoning violence, I would say we both should knock it off in that regard. So hosting a January 6th awards gala at your golf course is just the same as Kamala Harris supporting those that were gathered up in mass arrest in Minneapolis after the George Floyd protest. It's all same, Dom.
Totally the same. Yeah, totally the same.
Remember what January 6th participant in that he was willing to be the conduit of the fake electors for
sounds
Wisconsin
like
and Michigan.
Wisconsin U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, that guy?
Yeah, he was willing to deliver those to the vice president because apparently the fake electors, the fraudulent, the paper insurrection, Tom, they hadn't arrived on time. So Ron said, let me get involved up to my albino eyebrows and let me be the delivery boy for the insurrection.
The bag man, I prefer.
But what did he say that day? I wasn't scared by the crowds marching upon us. Not at all.
Not the
But if
January
they'd have
6th
been-
crowds.
If they'd have been some Black Lives Matter protesters, well,
Then
I might have been a little nervous.
they brought Trump down to the secure room when BLM was in D.C. Trump wanted to go to the Capitol with the insurrectionists during January 6th. And he sat on his ass while his supporters beat the hell out of cops and tried to stop the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in U.S. history. I think those are telling situations, certainly.
Official acts, immune from prosecution, perhaps not with a streamlined,
Community.
shiny new indictment. Jack Smith dropped it today. More devils.
Crazy.
Civic Media News. I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. The Republican presidential ticket is campaigning in Wisconsin this week. Running mate J.D. Vance will speak in De Pere tomorrow. Donald Trump will hold a town hall in La Crosse Thursday night. The latest Marquette poll shows the race for Wisconsin's presidential votes in a virtual tie. The federal government is considering new regulations on waste from slaughterhouses for the first time since the mid-1970s. John Rumpler of Environment America says it would be long overdue.
Slaughterhouses, the places where a lot of these animals are brought, release a huge amount of nitrogen and or phosphorus into our waterways.
The Environmental Protection Agency says slaughterhouses and large factory farms are driving a spike in harmful algae blooms. I'm Terry Bell, Civic Media News. Here's what you need to know closer to home.
This is news from WMDX Madison. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. We've been talking about the new guidelines for school vaccinations. They go into effect for this school year. There are changes to the meningitis shots and how kids get excused from the chickenpox vaccine. These updates aim to provide better protection against serious diseases and align with national recommendations. Dr. Natalie Weeks is a family medicine physician at Aspirus.
We are very lucky that we have these vaccines to prevent these potentially deadly diseases now. It's the number one thing that you could do to protect your child and the community and prevent these diseases from recurring.
If you have any questions about vaccines, Weeks encourages you to talk with your child's primary care provider. And a special 4-year-old is about to have her Make-A-Wish granted. Maisley Reddy lives in Sun Prairie. She has a type of eye cancer called retinoblastoma. Her wish is to spend the whole day visiting with animals at the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. And now Make-A-Wish Wisconsin is making it happen for her. And that's what you need to know. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. This is WMDX News.
start back in May, things really picked up when Bad Boys Ride or Die hit the big screen, and things escalated from there, with Inside Out 2 becoming the highest-grossing animated film ever, and Deadpool and Wolverine becoming the highest-grossing R-rated movie ever. A huge summer for Disney Studios, especially since Deadpool and Wolverine is not dead. After finishing in second place last week, thanks to the release of Alien Romulus, after 2 weeks at the top, Deadpool and Wolverine regained the #1 spot at the box office this past weekend after pulling in $18 million. Alien Romulus came in second place with just over $16 million. It Ends With Us, the surprise Blake Lively Channing Tatum hit, came in third place with $12 million. Tatum had 2 films in the top 5 this week, as Blake twice came in fourth place with just over $7 million. Faith-based film The Forge finished out the top 5 with just over $6 million. For more showbiz fun, tune in to Nightlight with me, Pete Schwaba, weeknights from 7 to 9 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app.
I'm meteorologist Mace Michaels. A slight shower chance this evening, otherwise mostly cloudy and a low in the upper 60s. Patchy early fog, otherwise a mixture of sun and clouds and highs in the low 80s for Wednesday. Another chance of showers and storms Thursday, high mid-80s. Currently 89 degrees.
At Chance Design Build, we provide remodeling done well with love. Our commitments extend beyond our workplace and your home to support our community. We judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin, and we believe all humans deserve quality, publicly funded education, childcare, and health care. But what do you believe in? At Chance Design Build, we believe every person must have the opportunity to thrive. If you're thinking about remodeling your home, go to chancedesignbuild.com to learn more about our commitments to you, your home, and our community.
Hey, Dom, how many palindromes can you name in 30 seconds?
Race car, mom, dad, reefer, kayak, level. Did I say mom already?
You're forgetting one really important one.
Zero res.
Not only is it the coolest palindrome ever, it's also our favorite.
Right, I remember. Why is that again?
They advertise with us.
Zero res, my favorite palindrome.
And carpet cleaner.
And carpet cleaner.
Get the best carpet cleaning ever. Schedule your carpet cleaning online at ZeroResMadison.com. Tell them Devil's Advocate sent you.
Jane Matnair and Greg Bach.
Coming up on the show, another edition of Public Service Announcement with Dr. Laura Hanks. You can send your questions in to janesays@civicmedia.us. Join us.
Think you know politics? Think again. Welcome to the Devil's Advocates.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Whale of a Tuesday, but we're done talking about that.
Are we?
We're moving on to our happy hour and the audience participation segment of this big program. That's you on the phones, on the text lines, and the great news for Aldous and others. It's all the same phone number. Just write it down once. 844-967-2789. And Dom, I'm looking forward to Friday Night Football. Don't make me turn this into Sports Talk Live. Bill from Oconomowoc, you're next. Welcome, Bill. What do you got for us?
Hey, Bill.
Dom, good afternoon. Dom Crute, you got to help me. Why, in God's green earth, do we have to give a microphone to a 34-time convicted felon, already convicted of sexual assault, 11 bankruptcies, which averages out to 1 every 6 years, and 2 impeachments? There is no reason for America to give that guy a microphone.
Absolutely.
I believe that.
You're wrong, Bill.
I also believe that Harris is twice as tough as Biden. If she debates that guy, she will destroy him. And all he does is lie. Why do we even give him acknowledgement? Help me out. Thank you.
Well, Bill, because he's the nominee of the Republican Party, because he's qualified and placed on ballots across all 50 states, and because if we don't get out there and tell all our friends the right thing to do, vote for Harris, in case you're wondering, there's a chance this guy could still become the president again. Because it's not about the number of votes. It's about votes in like 5 or 6 states, including the swing states. And we don't know what, RFK Jr. being on the ballot, or Cornel West being on the ballot, or Jill Stein being on the Wisconsin ballot, all of them are now qualified for the ballot. But I like the polling that would seem to suggest if you throw in the entirety of the ballot eligibles, all the third parties, and Harris versus Trump, well, Harris is whooping his ass, about 8% lead in the latest National Marquette University Law School poll. And Bill, I totally disagree, man. I want him on that stage. I just want him debating against a candidate who's willing and prepared to whoop his ass and hand him his lunch. And I think that is Kamala Harris. And I'm not saying that Hillary Clinton wasn't capable, but you got to turn off the mics, I believe, because you can't let him stalk up on her and do those sort of things. They should have a glass partition between the candidates just in case he's got COVID.
Oh, I mean, Bill, I think that, and I agree with Crute in a couple of things. One, as constitutionally required, he qualifies, right? He went through the thing, he got nominated by his party. This is what the megas want. This is the new Republican Party. The old Republican Party is dead. Long live MAGA. This is what they want. He is the embodiment of what the megas and the Republicans of the GOP want. They're down with that. They're down with the bankruptcies. They're down with the fraud. They're down with all of that. It's all about access to the power, all about access to the money. I mean, Donald Trump would not have gotten the reception he got when we saw him at the Freedom Summit in Iowa when he first came out. Back then, it was Scott Walker was the belle of the ball. But he would not have gotten that reception if he was not a billionaire, quote unquote. He wouldn't. If he was an old guy yelling at the clouds without any money in his pocket, he would not have the quote unquote respect of the mega party, man. And if you're talking about misogynistic, racist, ignorance, that is what embodies in Donald Trump. And apparently, and I can't say that this applies to every single one of the megas and the former Republicans, but as the leader of your party, if you embrace those attributes, if you embrace those characteristics, well, it kind of like, you want that to represent you. It is now, it's up on them, and they want this, Bill. They need this. They can't wait to have more of it. So I'd like to think that it's not endemic. It's not part of our fabric, but it is, man. It is. And Donald Trump allows them to be that. Hell, they cheer him on when he talks that way. Mass deportation. Hey, they got the signs up. Yeah, we're about mass deportation. What? So you're going to let all the cows in Wisconsin go without milking them? Man, when I was working on my neighbor's farm, we had to milk them twice a day, every day, 365 days a year. And if the majority of the farm labor in the state of Wisconsin is migrants, and the majority of those migrants are not here legally, and you're going to pick all them up and ship them out of Dodge, number one, those Republicans who employed them, well, they're going to go out of business because you can't get any of our kids these days. No one wants to work on the farm. I don't want to work on the farm. The reason I worked on the farm is because the youngest kid of like 15 was a year older than me. He turned 18, and he didn't want to work on the farm. So there's my job. So, and compare that to the uplifting and practical nature of the Kamala Harris and Walz campaign. Man, I'd like to think that we can appeal to our better selves, but Donald Trump does not do that, man. People want to roll in the gutter. They want to do the mudslinging. They want to be as mean as they can possibly be. I mean, look at the Jay Weber situation here in the state of Wisconsin on iHeart, man. They prop this guy up. Oh, Tim Walz, Gus. Oh, if this is an example of men in this country, we're screwed. You blubbering bitch boy. This guy is the number one rated right-wing talk radio host in the state of Wisconsin on the number one stick at iHeart in Milwaukee. As far as I know, he's not been on the air for 3 days, but he's still employed. We don't know. That's what they want. That's what they want.
That was a hell of a rant. I mean, you went like 3-4 rabbit holes deep there, man. I was trying to keep track. I was thinking, do I keep score at home here? May I disagree with you now? Just let me,
man. Let me hear it.
Minute rant. One, I thought you devolved into Donald Trump because you went through the brambles. You brought like 4 different rabbit holes into this conversation.
They're all related, man.
Really? Because I've heard the you farming in high school story once or twice, about as many times as I've heard the Joe and Trish and Free Willy story. But setting that aside for just a minute, Trump is not the Trump we saw in Iowa, in Des Moines, at the Citizens United Freedom Summit Caucus, or whatever the hell we call it.
In what regard, Curdy?
He's diminished. And he's diminished not just in our eyes. I mean, he's the fat Elvis these days. So when Bill says doesn't deserve a platform, we're not the ones giving or taking away the platform. Although I will be at the rally on Thursday. So, Bill, you can ignore, but you don't have to listen to the Trump speaking. But I would tell you, he is a major party candidate. And if nothing else, he is the shining example of what you should not do living your life. You know, like negative example. Don't do this. But I would say it's the nature of the beast, man. This is politics. We choose. And I want him cast out there. I want this fat Elvis on the stage debating Kamala Harris. And I want to enjoy the evening with lots of friends, Dom. I'm working diligently to book a watch party for September 10th. I've got many leads. You know, that is a busy night in the city of Madison, but I think I got a venue, and I'm pretty damn sure we're going to put on a party, and we're going to watch Kamala Harris hand old fat Elvis a stunning, devastating defeat. He's going to want to quit the sport in the ring that night. I have no doubt she's going to hand him his ass because he's 9 years older than when we met him, Dom. And he's not better. He's out of material. And it's so stale. I mean, this guy's trying to jump the shark backwards. It is so old and so stale that I think compared and contrast on the stage with Kamala Harris, mic's on, mic's off. Either way, this guy's going to get crushed because he's old and he can't stay on point. Sounds a little bit like you telling that last rant story.
Come on, man. It was related to the mass migration. It was related to the policies of what the megas want. Of course, it makes total sense because if it would actually happen, they would drive up labor costs in this country. They would drive up inflation. It would be challenged on
if
every
there was actual mass deportation.
If they go through the attempt. Of course, man. This is what I'm saying. This is
you
what
know
I'm saying.
I think the greater problem.
This is what the megas want, dude. They think they want it. Those Republicans in northern Wisconsin who are employing these quote unquote illegal migrants on their farms, that's what they want. They want the cheap labor. They go away. They might vote for Trump, but they need the labor. What are you going to do then?
Well, I'm going to take a caller. I believe it might be my mailman, Matt from Middleton. Welcome, Matt. What do you got for us?
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Doubles. I just wanted to comment about and ask your opinion on messaging. And
first of all,
to me that
are you my mailman, Matt from Middleton, or a different Matt from Middleton?
I am your mailman.
Nice. Well, I just moved today, so please forward the mail up to the cabin. I think I put something in the mailbox there for you. Sorry to interrupt, Matt.
Well, it occurs to me that MAGA is a very extreme party, and I never hear from Democrats calling them out as extremists because they are. And the equivalent for Democrats to be that extreme, we'd have to be calling for communism or something. I don't know what our
after-birth abortions. That's how extreme Democrats are, according to the fiction of Fox News and Donald Trump, man. I mean, that would be a pretty extreme circumstance, post-birth abortion. That would be extreme in my book. But that's how they're characterizing us, Matt, or the left.
Yeah. And we've never been as extreme as they are, and they seem to get away with it in the media and everything else. They're never called out for it.
Well, don't you think this cycle has changed, man? Don't you think the insertion of Kamala Harris into this cycle, this former prosecutor, don't you think it's changed everything? And I
well,
think
that's their only argument they're going to use is that Kamala is a far lefty because she did have some policies when she was running that were a bit to the left, but that's not her today.
she could have been a moderate Republican and they'd call her a communist.
It doesn't
lefty
matter
Marxist.
what you are or are not. They will call you what they want anyway, Matt. Thanks for the call, man. Certainly appreciate it. And the post-birth abortion thing, come on. I got an uncle who's probably a Trumper. I don't know where he's at this year, but let's just call him probably a Trumper. And I remember when we were naughty, when we were kids.
Are we talking helmet?
And he used to tell me, it's never too late for an abortion. And that always kind of stuck with me. No, it's not post-birth abortion. It's called murder. Murder. One thing, AP reporting. 238 people who worked for former President H.W. Bush, former President George W. Bush, former Arizona Senator John McCain, and Utah Senator Mitt Romney calling their fellow, quote, moderate Republicans and conservative independents to join them in backing Harris and her running mate Walz over Trump and Vance. Quote, of course, we have plenty of honest ideological disagreements with Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, the Republicans wrote, noting the significance of a handful of battleground states that proved crucial to Biden's slim majority in 2020. That's to be expected. The alternative, however, is simply untenable. Untenable. 238 former Republicans, big shots, staffers in these administrations. I mean, get the list out, man. If you don't believe me and Crute, do you believe them?
Dominic, have you seen the piece, Larry David's opinion piece over at the Washington Post? My post-birth abortion?
No, I have not.
I tell you what, let me save it. We'll bring it back. Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm. He has a biting satirical piece at the Washington Post. My only fear, the Trumpsters aren't going to see the humor. They're not going to get it, Dom. But you will, because you're amongst the smartest fans ever of the greatest radio show ever, and this is the last segment. Come back with us. 844-967-2789. Better yet, join us on the phones.
60% of the time, they're right every time. The Devil's Advocates.
And welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show, our last segment of the day. So if you got something to say, hit us up right now on the lines, 844-967-2789.
Dom, a lot of presidential level and vice presidential level political events. I just want to run a couple down right in our backyards. First and foremost, we got J.D. Vance in De Pere, Wisconsin, Green Bay area tomorrow. So, make a note of it. Do what you do when J.D. Vance comes to town.
Which is,
I would say,
nothing.
boo him.
Boo this man.
But beyond that, I will be at the Lacrosse Center on Thursday, and the event is a Donald Trump town hall moderated by Tulsi Gabbard. So we will be like the pregame show before the Trump town hall. At least I will be. Dom will do it from the studio because you never know. Trump might not pay the interweb bill and everything could crash. You never can tell. That's why you tune in. It's the live radio experience. And no plans yet on Monday, but Tim and Gwen Walls, maybe you've heard of them, the new vice presidential nominee and the second lady in waiting, are going to be at Labor Fest, and that's not official. They're going to be in Milwaukee on Monday, but it is Labor Fest and Summerfest grounds. What a great place to host Governor Tim Walz and his wife Gwen. So expect to see them there. But back to this Larry David piece at the Washington Post. And Trump and his ilk have been talking about the Democrats and their extreme policy of post-birth abortion, a little bit from a column he wrote. And this is satirical, just in case you're CJ and you don't understand the difference.
Now, when you say satirical, what does that mean?
Well, I'm going to read a quote from Donald Trump, and then Larry David's going to express, his opinions in response to Trump. It must be remembered that the Democrats are the radical ones on this position because they support abortion up to and even beyond the 9th month. The concept of having an abortion in the later months and even execution after birth. And that's exactly what it is. The baby is born. The baby is executed after birth, and it's unacceptable. And almost everyone agrees with that. Yeah, almost everyone does agree with that.
Almost everyone thinks murder's bad, yes.
Except for Larry David, who writes, he's right. We do support executions after birth. In fact, many Democrats support execution of kids up till age 4 or until they start kindergarten. Now, Larry David writes, satirically, I respect their opinions, but that's a little late for my taste. I'm good till about 2.5. I've never said this publicly, but my wife Thelma and I had a poor post-birth abortion. And it was just minutes after the baby was born. It was in my 30s when I met the girl of my dreams. We shared much in common, especially our belief in post-birth abortions. In fact, that was one of my questions on our first date because it would have been a big red flag for me if she didn't. Thankfully, she was even more adamant about them than I was. It was a match made in heaven, as he writes. A few months after we got married, Thelma told me she was pregnant. When she went into labor, I watched in awe as our baby emerged from the womb. After our son was swaddled, the doctor showed him to my wife, who had a bit of an odd reaction. I wouldn't call it a wince. It was more of a gasp of surprise, but not in a good way. When the doctor showed him to me, I didn't say out loud what I was thinking, but the acronym WTF crossed my mind, following by OMFG. Could those be my genes? Granted, I'm no Mr. America, but I'm certainly not so unsightly as to produce that. Was my grandfather, who I always called Trigger because of his resemblance to Roy Rogers' horse, the culprit? Do horse face genes like baldness skip a generation? Maybe the problem was Thelma's side, but that was not the time to explore that. I was disappointed, to say the least, but the thought of doing anything about it hadn't crossed my mind. Thelma, bless her heart, was the one who brought it up. No way I'm taking him home. He's embarrassing. Am I supposed to show that monster to my parents and my friends? I can't even look at him without cringing. Again, this might be satirical, CJ, just telling you. Larry David, the author. This is published at the Washington Post. A little bit more. I had to admit she had a point. I turned to the doctor. He was wearing a Jimmy Carter campaign pin, so I had no qualms about asking his opinion. The doctor pursed his lips. I completely agree with her. I even had to look away for a moment when I pulled him out. He's not going to have an easy life looking like that. So if you want to do it, now's the best time. And Larry David writes, fortunately, we live in California. A lot of people around the country had to drive out of state for their post-birth abortions. What a drag that must have been. Before podcast, I turned to Thelma. You down? She didn't hesitate. Yeah, let's do it. The doctor nodded and took the grotesque into another room. Thelma, who had been in a foul mood since the kid came out, perked up. Hey, maybe we can go to Skip's party now. Yeah, I thought, Skip's party. I'd be sorry to miss that. Sure, why not? Nothing's stopping us. But aren't they going to ask about the baby? Yeah, so what? They're going to be a lot of post-birth abortionists there. John and Patty had one. Jim and Rhea offered twins. Oh, yeah, right, the twins. Yeah, let's go. Have fun. And with that, the doctor returned. Well, he gushed, rubbing his hands together. All done. We can go now. Excellent, Thelma said, getting out of bed. As we gathered our things, I reached in my pocket for the parking ticket. But of course, per usual, it wasn't there. I checked all my pockets twice. No ticket. Why does this always happen to me? Why could I have done with it? I know the guy handed it to me. The doctor came through. There it is on the floor. Phew! I effusively thanked the doctor for everything. As I wheeled Thelma out of the hospital, I couldn't help but wonder when she might be ready to try again. Folks, we're the Devil's Advocates. Thanks for listening. Thanks you, Rich. And I'll take
Rich.
tomorrow off. Dom's doing it without me. Lift him up. Like a great episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
All right, fellas.